Chapter 886. At this time, Xian Yun and Bing Tang heard the news and rushed over from Snow Pear Courtyard with Qin Yining's cloak. The Sun Clan took the cloak and put it on Qin Yining. Like a mother hen protecting her chick, she opened her arms to block them and looked coldly at the Yao clan who sat on the ground and made a scene. Qin Yining sighed and comforted the Sun Clan. "Mother, don't be angry. I'm fine. Fine. Look at your dress, then look at Ji Yun's hand. If she didn't protect you loyally, what would you do if she burned you? I was blind in the past to think that you had a good marriage." The Sun Clan cried, "You were raised by me. No matter how poor your family is, there's no reason for you to go to other people's family and suffer. Just as well, you can take this opportunity to leave them with me. Then, everyone will be clean. I won't have to worry about your safety all day." Qin Yining knew that her mother was angry, so she comforted the Sun Clan in a low voice. Logically speaking, now was not the time for internal strife. After finally calming down the Sun Clan, Qin Yining turned around and helped the Yao clan up. "Old madam, if you have something to say, please talk it out. The floor is cold." How could the Yao clan listen? She shook off Qin Yining's hand and cried while slapping her thigh, "Oh my God. My son is unlucky to have married such a wastrel of misfortune. She's stirring up trouble in my family and making my son estranged from his own mother. If my son doesn't divorce this wastrel of a daughter-in-law, I'll kill myself here." Qin Yining was speechless. If it weren't for the tense situation, she really wanted to wash her hands of this matter. While he was in a dilemma, Qin Huaiyuan rushed over after hearing the news. The Yao clan had been living in the countryside all this time. They had no idea that Qin Huaiyuan was still alive. As soon as they saw Qin Huaiyuan, they stopped crying. They were so scared that their souls had left their bodies. They opened their mouths and pointed at Qin Huaiyuan, gasping for breath. Their pupils shrank because of fear. You, Qin Huaiyuan walked over and looked at the overturned stove on the ground, the extinguished charcoal fire, and Qin Yining's burnt cloak and skirt. He had a vague guess. The servant leaned over to Qin Huaiyuan's ear and whispered a few words. The members of the Sun Clan also looked at Qin Huaiyuan with grievances as tears streamed down their faces. Qin Huaiyuan's face was calm. His eyes were as dark as the abyss. He said in a deep voice, "What's going on?" He turned around and asked the members of the Sun Clan, "You're a guest. How can you let your wife sit on the ground?" The members of the Sun Clan felt wronged. Just as she was about to refute, Qin Yining and Chao Yuqing gently pinched her left and right. The members of the Sun Clan looked around and finally hesitated and didn't say anything. Qin Huaiyuan suddenly smiled and looked down at the members of the Yao clan. "Mrs. Qin, please calm down. There must be some misunderstanding. We're all family. Why are you so angry? Did Sister Yi say or do something that made you angry? As her father, I'll definitely teach her well." The members of the Yao clan's eyes widened. Are you a human or a ghost? You must be joking." "Of course I'm a human." The Yao clan covered her chest and her eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. "Qin Yining didn't die. Didn't he die? Didn't they hold a funeral? Family Qin is so strange." The Yao clan lowered her head and looked at the shadow on the ground again. In the afternoon, even though the winter sun seemed to be covered with a layer of white fog, the shadow of Qin Huaiyuan was very clear. This was not a ghost. The Yao clan finally relaxed after realizing this. She jumped up and stared at Qin Huaiyuan with arms akimbo. "It said that Mr. Qin is a very wise man. Your family Qin is not a small one. Why don't you teach your daughter well? Even the daughters of ordinary families know to be filial to their mother-in-law. What's more, she committed 7 crimes. I just said a few words and she falsely accused me of setting fire to her. My Pang family can't have such a daughter-in-law. Qin Huayuan's eyes darkened and he smiled slightly. Mrs. Qin, you flatter me. I'm not a wise man. Naturally, I'm not as knowledgeable as Mrs. Qin. I often tell Sister Yi's mother that it's rare to have a daughter like Mrs. Qin who comes from a big family. Our Qin's family is low in status. I've only been the prime minister for a few years. My wife is only an ordinary daughter from Ding General Manor. Naturally, she's not as good as Mrs. Qin in teaching her daughter. However, if you say that she committed 7 crimes, as her father, I'm afraid. She has lived with Wang Yi for so many years. They've been through thick and thin together. She's been diligent and respectful to her elders. She also gave birth to 2 sons for Wang Yi. I've never heard her say anything bad about her in-laws. Mrs. Qin, please tell me which of the 7 crimes she committed. In terms of family background, the Yao clan was just a woman from an ordinary rural family. The Sun clan was the daughter of a Duke General Manor, who didn't know how to teach their children. In terms of family background, the Pang family was an official family. The Pang family had been destroyed long ago. The Yao clan was just a restaurant in the marketplace. They were rich because of their son. How dare they pretend to be a noble lady when they just cleaned the mud on their trousers? In terms of the 7 crimes, the Yao clan treated them so harshly. Qin Yining didn't say anything. They were humble and patient enough. What else did they want? The people present were not fools. At this time, they all looked at the Yao clan with disdain. The Sun clan felt refreshed. She just realized that usually when she quarreled with Qin Huayuan didn't really quarrel with her. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to argue with him. Qin Huayuan spoke neither too fast nor too slow. The Yao clan couldn't keep up with his words. After blinking for a long time, the Yao clan member said angrily, "Your daughter is a traitor. She's jealous of our family. Since she married into our family hasn't had any peace. You still have the cheek to say that she's a good person? If she's so good, you can take her back and marry her to whoever you want. My family doesn't dare to take her." As soon as she finished speaking, an angry rebuke came from behind. "Yu Ping, what are you talking about?" Yao Qinggu and Madame Ma walked in quickly. Behind them, there were 2 servant women. They were carrying a few big bags. Obviously, they had already prepared the luggage. These were all prepared for the journey. Madame Ma strode in. Unable to restrain her anger, she raised her hand and slapped Yao Qinggu. "Evil creature! How dare you spout nonsense? Kneel down." The Yao clan member didn't expect that their mother would raise her hand and slap them indiscriminately. She immediately burst into tears and looked at Yao Qinggu for help. Yao Qinggu didn't side with her like before. He frowned and didn't say anything. Madame Ma hurriedly said, "In-law, please don't listen to her nonsense. It's my fault for not teaching my daughter well. I've taught her to be a thing that doesn't know etiquette. Lassie is very good. She has a good temper and good character. She also has a deep relationship with our Dai Fu. Please don't listen to her." Qin Huayuan smiled and bowed to Madame Ma. "Old madam, you praise me so much. I'm really ashamed. It must be because we didn't teach her well. That's why such a misunderstanding happened." "Don't say that." Madame Ma said solemnly, "In-law, you're the Prime Minister of Dian and a famous official of 2 dynasties. In-law, you're from a prestigious family. Duke Dinggua's mansion is full of loyal people. In-law, you're also warm-hearted, straightforward, and righteous. Sister Yi is a good child. Don't belittle yourself. It's my Dai Fu's good fortune to be able to marry such a virtuous wife like Sister Yi. Qin Huaiyuan waved his hand in shame and sighed, in the end, I'm incompetent. In the early years, I offended a lot of people because of my different positions. That's why Sister Yi was left wandering outside. It wasn't easy to find her, but she got married after a few years of happiness. Sister Yi's teaching was indeed our negligence. However, I don't believe that Sister Yi committed the 7 crimes of lust and jealousy. Madam-in-law, you seem to be suspecting the bloodline of Brother Zhao and Brother Han. When Madame Ma heard this, she remembered that the Yao clan and Yao Qinggu had drugged her with safflower when she was pregnant with Qin Yining. Then, she thought about the 2 cute and clever children she had now. She immediately became furious. She turned around and glared fiercely at Yao Qinggu. You stupid girl who doesn't know how to behave. Madame Ma fiercely slapped the Yao clan's shoulders twice. The Yao clan covered their shoulders and hid behind Yao Qinggu. Qin Yining saw that Madame Ma was so angry. She didn't know how much Madame Ma had worried about her because she didn't get along with the Yao clan. He was afraid that such a good old lady would be angered, so he hurriedly came forward and helped Madame Ma to the side. Grandmother, please calm down. Mother-in-law was just angry and said those things without thinking. Please don't take it seriously. Today's matter, bah. Who said that it was a misunderstanding? What I said was the truth. Don't flatter yourself. Yao clan's rebuttal blurted out. You. Madame Ma was so angry that she wanted to rush forward. But this time, Yao Qinggu was 1 step ahead of her. He angrily scolded, Shut up. Do you still want to talk nonsense at this time? Yao Qinggu doted on his daughter very much and rarely got angry. When he opened his mouth, outsiders didn't feel anything, but Madame Ma and the Yao clan were stunned. Yao clan stared at his father in disbelief and said with grievance, Father, didn't you say, I told you to shut up? Yao Qinggu glared at him. In the end, Yao clan was intimidated by their father and didn't dare to speak again. Yao Qinggu turned around and solemnly bowed to Qin Huaiyuan and said, In-law, don't be angry. It's this old man's fault for not teaching his daughter well and breaking the rules. No matter what the cause of today's matter is, it's Sister Yi's fault for causing such a scene. Yao clan saw that their own father wasn't willing to help them, so they felt wronged and sobbed. Madame Ma looked at Yao Qinggu suspiciously. Today, Yao Qinggu's behavior was too different from usual. She couldn't help but wonder if there was something she didn't know. But in any case, Yao Qinggu and Madame Ma's attitude made the Sun clan and Qin Huaiyuan feel a little better. Yao Qinggu and Madame Ma were 1 generation older than Qin Huaiyuan. Naturally, Qin Huaiyuan couldn't let them bow to him. He hurriedly moved away and bowed back, Old Master Yao, you don't have to be so polite. Yao Qinggu saw that Qin Huaiyuan only said such a simple sentence, and his heart felt uneasy. Family Qin was obviously still angry. Chapter 887. Yao Qinggu couldn't help but curse the Yao clan in his heart for being so troublesome. They didn't care about the situation at all. Wasn't this causing trouble for their own family? Not to mention anything else, they had offended the family Qin. That Qin guy didn't flare up in front of them, but he had been in the government for so many years. Did he have the temperament to suffer losses? What if the family Qin people found an excuse to leave the 3 of them to fend for themselves in the desert? There was no food or water in the desert. How could the 3 of them have a chance to survive? When the time came, the family Qin could just say to Pang Xiao that it was an accident and cover up the matter. Their deaths would be in vain. When Yao Qinggu thought of this, he could accept any loss at the moment. Moreover, he knew his daughter's stubborn temperament best. The family Qin's daughter was astute. She wouldn't cause trouble for no reason. It was most likely his daughter who found the excuse first. After scolding people for so long, they probably wouldn't suffer any losses. Yao Qinggu smiled and cupped his hands. Don't be angry. This is your magnanimity. I know my own daughter. Her temper is a bit impatient. Once her temper flares up, she doesn't choose her words carefully. In fact, she's not a bad person. Just as Yi had said earlier, there must be some kind of misunderstanding. We're all family. It's inevitable that tongues will clash with teeth. Please forgive her for being insensible. The Sun Clan's daughter pursed her lips. Seeing that Qin Huaiyuan and Yao Qinggu were about to be the peacemakers, she couldn't suppress the anger in her heart. Even if Chao Yuqing kept pinching her hand, hinting at her not to speak, she still snorted and said, "Even if there's a misunderstanding, it's fine if it's cleared up. However, your mother used a charcoal stove to hit people and even set our sister Yi's clothes on fire. She was lucky that the family reacted in time and put out the fire. If she didn't react in time and burn Sister Yi, the matter wouldn't be settled so easily." Qin Huaiyuan glanced back at the Sun Clan. Out of consideration for the overall situation, Qin Huaiyuan's family Qin and Qin Huaiyuan had to stick together to survive. Once they had a falling out with Pang Zhao's family, Xie would no longer be a safe place for Qin Huaiyuan's family to hide. Therefore, Qin Huaiyuan had always been polite on the surface. How could he not know his daughter's grievances? But for the sake of the bigger picture, he could only suppress it for the time being. At the same time, according to his actions, the most clumsy way to deal with this kind of matter was to make a scene in person. However, what the Sun Clan had said was exactly what he had been suppressing in his heart. He knew the Sun Clan very well. The fact that she didn't go up to the Yao clan and start a fight was already the limit of her patience. She was, after all, his wife, and she was devoted to Sister Yi, so he couldn't be too harsh on her. Moreover, he also wanted to see how far the Yao clan could go without falling out with them. Yao Qinggu was a shrewd person. When he saw the Sun Clan's words and Qin Huaiyuan's silence, he understood the crux of the matter. He was thinking about how to answer when Madame Ma spoke first. "I was wondering why Sister Yi's dress became like this. So it was you who did it." Madame Ma was so angry that she wanted to kick the Yao clan a few times. "She's your own family, but you did this to her. What are you thinking?" At this time, the Yao clan was in a situation where her father didn't love her and her mother didn't love her. Yao Qinggu and Madame Ma refused to speak up for her. She had been wronged for a long time, so she blamed all of this on Qin Yining. She wasn't 4 or 5 years old. She was already in her 40s or 50s, yet she was treated like this by her parents in front of so many outsiders. She was beaten and scolded as she wished. Her own son didn't want to be close to her and even sent her to the countryside to suffer. The Yao clan roared angrily, "That little whore mistreated me and refused to let my son take a concubine. I burned her to death. You can arrest me and bring me to the officials. My son is the current dynasty's Wang Yi. Let's see what you can do to me. You unfilial daughter. Look at what you're saying. Is this something a human should be saying? I might as well beat you to death today and be done with it. Grandmother, please calm down." The scene was fine, but it became noisy again. Qin Huaiyuan frowned. He really had nothing to say to Qin Yining's mother-in-law. What's going on? At this time, Pang Xiao quickly ran in from the side door. When he saw the mess in the courtyard, he frowned. He first looked at Qin Yining questioningly, but Qin Yining was busy pulling Madame Ma away. Pang Xiao didn't notice Qin Yining's strange behavior and was slightly relieved. He quickly went to support Madame Ma and comforted her. "Grandmother, please calm down. Let's talk nicely." "Talk nicely? Why don't you ask your troublesome mother what she wants to do?" Madame Ma's face was pale with anger. She pointed at the Yao clan. Yao clan members were hiding behind Yao Qinggu. When they saw Pang Xiao come back, they screamed, "If you are my son, you should divorce this disorderly woman." "What are you talking about? Why would I divorce my wife? When did I have the intention to divorce her?" Pang Xiao was in a terrible fix. He quickly grabbed Qin Yining's hand and squeezed it. Then, he bowed deeply to his sobbing mother-in-law and father-in-law. "Father-in-law, mother-in-law, your son-in-law didn't mean that. There must be some misunderstanding. Please give me some time to solve it." Qin Huaiyuan originally wanted to keep the peace. It didn't matter if he was wronged on the surface. If he wanted to vent his anger for his daughter, he had thousands of ways. Every way was better than arguing in front of them. Therefore, Qin Huaiyuan very considerately nodded and said reasonably, "Go." He turned around and motioned to the Sun clan, Chao Yuqing, and the others, "Let's go." Sun clan was still unconvinced, but Qin Huaiyuan looked at her with gentle eyes. His expression was so firm that she couldn't refute. Moreover, Chao Yuqing and Qin Yining had been hinting at her not to disobey. Sun clan could only purse her lips and suppress her anger. She grabbed Qin Yining's hand and said, "Okay, since Wang Yi said that you want to solve it, then I hope you can solve it well. Sister Yi, come with me." Sun clan wouldn't leave their daughter here to compromise. Qin Yining turned around and looked at Pang Xiao. The two of them looked at each other. Pang Xiao's eyes were full of concern and gentleness. At this moment, Qin Yining's cloak was open from where she was standing. Pang Xiao saw several burn marks on her skirt, and then he saw a pile of hand stoves, charcoal fire, and the messy cloak in the distance. His eyebrows knitted into a knot. Pang Xiao watched Qin Yining's back disappear into the distance. Only then did he look back at his surroundings. The servants in the front yard were in awe of Pang Xiao. When they saw his knife-sharp gaze, the servants all bowed and hurriedly retreated. Pang Xiao ordered Huzi with a heavy expression, "Ask 2 people to take the luggage to the guest courtyard for now." "Got it." Huzi obeyed the order and went to do it. Pang Xiao turned around and said to Yao Clan, whose makeup was ruined from crying, "Old madam, please." He held Ma Clan's hand and said softly, "Grandmother, don't be angry. It's not worth it to hurt your body. Grandson will take you to the guest courtyard first." Yao Qinggu, who was ignored, was very unhappy. However, he couldn't show it in front of his wife. It would make him look like he was competing for favor with his wife. Yao Qinggu followed behind Pang Xiao and Ma Clan with his hands behind his back. Yao Clan was left behind. She looked at her son's cold back and couldn't do anything. As his son, he wasn't close to his mother. If this got out, she would be too ashamed to face others. The servants of Qin Manor all looked at her strangely. It was as if they were looking at a dirty rat. Yao Clan snorted coldly. She had no choice but to follow. Pang Xiao personally took them to the guest courtyard. Huzi did things properly. Not only did he put the luggage in place, but he also arranged for a maid to serve them. As soon as they entered, the brazier in the room was already lit. A gust of hot air mixed with the elegant fragrance of fruit rushed to their faces. There was also freshly brewed tea in the teapot on the square table. Yao Qinggu heaved a sigh of relief. He sat down at the square table and poured himself a cup of hot tea. Pang Xiao helped Ma Clan to sit on the soft couch by the window. He turned around and served her hot tea. "Grandmother, have a sip of hot tea to calm down." Ma Clan shook her head and pushed away the teacup he brought her in despair. Her voice was full of bitterness and sadness. That ignorant girl bullied Yi like that. In the past, when we were in the prince's mansion, she bullied us behind closed doors. I told her off several times. I stood up for Sister E every time, but in the end, we were the ones who wronged her. To put it bluntly, I was also selfish. I stood up for EE because I couldn't stand your mother's way of doing things. Secondly, I also hoped that EEE would give me face. Look what happened now. Your mother, that wastrel, came to bully Sister E as soon as she returned. She even scolded Sister E for committing the crime of lust and jealousy in front of Sister Ye's in-laws. She even called her a whore and a pervert. Such ugly words. If it was a delicate person, I'm afraid they would have already killed themselves to prove their innocence. Fortunately, Sister Ye's parents were born in noble families. They were so well-mannered that they didn't fall out with us. But whose child isn't a treasure? Sister Ye's parents were really good to be insulted like that in front of others. If it were me, I would have killed her with a knife. As Madame Ma spoke, she began to sob. Her words were incoherent, but Pang Xiao was able to piece together the whole story. He turned around and glanced at the Yao clan. Yao Shi immediately went forward to hold Pang Xiao's hand. Son, your maternal grandmother is old and muddle-headed. She is very easily swayed and can't control people. Just a few words of praise and her heart will soften. You didn't see the face of your wastrel daughter-in-law today. I'm her mother-in-law. Can't I reprimand her a little? Pang Xiao withdrew his hand and took 2 steps back under the astonished gaze of the Yao clan. Old madam, you must be tired from the journey. Rest early. He then said to Ma clan, Grandmother, don't be angry. I will handle this matter well. As for who is right and who is wrong, the people I left behind will naturally see everything. I will go and ask them. If we are in the wrong, I will definitely ask for father-in-law and mother-in-law's forgiveness. I will try my best not to alienate our families. Ma clan nodded and patted Pang Xiao's shoulder sympathetically. Chapter 888. Pang Xiao listened to Yao Qinggu's words, which only revolved around his own safety and did not have the slightest intention of analyzing the situation. He could not help but sigh and shake his head. He bowed to the 2 elders and was about to leave. Yao clan was anxious and hurriedly pulled Pang Xiao's hand. Hey! Son! Listen to what your mother has to say. Go and ask those people. It's hard to guarantee that they won't be biased and wholeheartedly speak for the family Qin girl. If you want to know what happened, I'll tell you. No need. Pang Xiao shook his head and turned to leave. Yao clan chased after him. He held the door frame and watched Pang Xiao walk away. He was immediately furious. He forgot his mother after getting a wife. He turned around and said to Yao Qinggu, in this world, there are only ruthless sons and no ruthless mothers. You see how Dai Fu treats me, but I can't get angry at him. Madame Ma lay down on the soft couch. She was so angry that her heart was in pain. She was too lazy to listen to Yao clan's words. Originally, she thought that Yao Qinggu would return to his original self after getting married. He would criticize the family Qin and teach the Yao clan how to act one way in front of others and another behind their backs. Now, facing the father and son, she felt a sense of powerlessness that came from her bones. No matter how she taught her daughter, Yao Yuping would be able to learn something else from her father. How could she pull a heavy cart by herself? Who knew that this time, Yao Qinggu's reaction was beyond Madame Ma's expectations? Go to the side room and kneel down. Yao Qinggu stood up and angrily slammed the table. Without my permission, you are not allowed to come out. You are not allowed to eat. When Madame Ma heard this, her heart was relieved. She turned over and sat up. She looked at the father and son in surprise. She did not understand why Yao Qinggu's temper suddenly changed. Yao clan turned pale with fright. He pulled Yao Qinggu's arm and shook it. Father, what are you doing? There are no outsiders here, you. Go now. Yao Qinggu shook off Yao Clan's hand and walked to the door. He lifted the sapphire blue curtain and called two unfamiliar servants in the courtyard. You two, come here. The two servants suspiciously walked to the front and saluted. Old Master Yao. Well, you don't need to do anything else. Go see Madame Yao. Don't let her to kneel down as punishment. Without my permission, she is not allowed to get up, and she is not allowed to eat or drink. The two female servants were loyal servants of the Qin family. They had heard a bit of what had happened earlier and were secretly looking down on Yao Shi. Who would have thought that such a good thing would fall on their heads? Just as they were looking down on the shrew had delivered herself to their door. The two servants quickly salute and yows. Yao Qinggu let them into the house and waved his hand, take her away. Yes. The two female servants held Yao Shi's arms on either side. Yao Clan screamed in disbelief. Father, father, how can you do this to your daughter? Didn't you do it for the outsiders? Now there are no outsiders. Why do you punish me? Father. Yao Qinggu's face darkened. It seemed that this daughter was really spoiled. She didn't use her brain and didn't choose her words carefully. She had been living in a dog's stomach all these years. How could she say such things in front of the family servants? Take her away. The servants curled their lips and took Yao Clan out. They couldn't help but feel pity for fourth aunt. She was such a beautiful woman. She married a good husband. Why did she have such a troublesome mother-in-law? It was true that men were afraid of entering the wrong line of work and women were afraid of marrying the wrong man. What kind of family the husband's family was really important. Yao Clan was pressed into a side room. The servants were smart. They chose a thick and soft cushion to cushion Yao Clan's knees. They also brought a brazier to keep her warm. Although Yao Qinggu said that she was not allowed to eat or drink, she could still drink hot water. For this kind of spoiled noblewoman, only drinking water and not eating was enough torture. If they went overboard, it was inevitable that people would say that the family was too vicious. Yao Clan was pressed to kneel on the cushion. She struggled twice and tried to get up. Yao Qinggu's voice came from outside the door. Kneel. If you don't listen to me, don't call me father anymore. Yao Clan's movements immediately stopped. She felt wronged and started to sob. Yao Qinggu saw from the gap of the curtain that Yao Clan didn't get up again. Only then did he go back to the room with satisfaction. Ma Shi had already calmed down. Seeing Yao Qinggu enter the door, she sneered. In the early years, when I was disciplining my daughter, you just wouldn't let me. After I finished disciplining her in front of you, you said something behind my back. You made a good daughter into such a person. Don't you think it's a bit late to be disciplining her now? Yao Qinggu was afraid of Ma Shi since he was young. Even now, when he talked back to Ma Shi, he didn't dare to look her in the eyes. He only muttered, disciplining your daughter is your woman's business. Your daughter's bad behavior is also your problem. Yes. I don't know how to teach her. I'm not a good mother, but you're not a good father either. Look at how you've spoiled your daughter. Didn't you spoil her? Ma Shi sneered. You too can do whatever you want. Don't be too filthy. Be careful of God's punishment. Yao Qinggu looked at his old wife's pale face. His lips moved, but he didn't say anything. At the same time, Pang Xiao had already arrived at the front hall. He called Jinghu Wei, who stayed in the house, to inquire about the situation. Jinghu Wei had always been the most loyal. He was also objective and cautious. He wouldn't deliberately mislead people. When Pang Xiao asked, they supplemented each other's answers. At that time, Wang Fei went to salute old Madame Yao. But old Madame Yao came back from the field and was angry. When she met Wang Fei, she said a few words. They quarreled for a while. Old Madame Yao hit Wang Fei with a hand stove. Wang Fei reacted quickly and stepped back to avoid it. But the charcoal in the hand stove fell out and set Wang Fei's dress on fire. It almost caused a big trouble. Fortunately, Ji Yun's hand was fast, so Wang Fei didn't get burned. But this subordinate saw that Ji Yun's hand seemed to be burned with several blisters. After the incident, Old Master Qin and First Madam both came out. Old Madame Yao said that Wang Fei had committed 7 crimes. Second Madam wanted to divorce Wang Fei. Family Qin has always been a peacemaker. Wang Fei also said that it was a misunderstanding. Later, Old Master Yao came and apologized to Old Master Qin. The atmosphere had already eased, but Old Madame Yao made a fuss again. Old Madam was so angry that she wanted to hit her. Wang Yi, you came back. Pang Xiao's face was calm. He pursed his lips and nodded. So, Old Madam was unreasonable because she held a grudge and almost burned Sister Yi. Father-in-law and mother-in-law stood up for their daughter. Yes. Jinghu Wei nodded. Pang Xiao nodded and let them leave. He only felt that his face was burning. He didn't have the face to see Qin Yining anymore. Jinghu Wei was his subordinate. Even if his reply was objective, he still left him some face. He didn't go into too much detail about the Yao clan. But how could Pang Xiao not know what his mother was like? Qin Yining was sensible and generous. He wouldn't look for trouble. So, the cause of today's incident was all because of the Yao clan. Moreover, in the current situation, anyone with half a brain knew that they couldn't let the family Qin and the Yao clan become unhappy. These two families, no matter who left, couldn't live in peace in Xia. Even if they had the ability to survive, once they had disloyalty, they would suspect that the other party would betray them. It was also possible that they would really betray the other party. Pang Xiao wanted to stay with Qin Yining to face Li Qitian. What he did was something that could cost him his life. If he made a wrong move, he would be consigned to eternal damnation. None of them wanted to have a fire in their own backyard at this critical juncture. So, whether it was Qin Yining or Qin Huaiyuan, they were smart people who understood the political situation. They would only suppress the matter and not stir up trouble. Even so, the matter was still blown out of proportion. It was enough to see how much his mother had gone overboard. Pang Xiao wanted to investigate, but he didn't want to hear from others how much the Yao clan had gone overboard. He would lose face. Pang Xiao sat down weakly. He put his elbow on the table and covered his forehead. He lowered his head and buried his face in his palms. After a long time, Pang Xiao gradually calmed down. He then got up and went to Snow Pear Courtyard. He felt very ashamed. He didn't have the face to see the family Qin. But even if he was ashamed, he had to say what he was thinking. He couldn't let people think that he was avoiding the problem. Today, Sister Yi had been humiliated in public. She must be very sad. If he shrunk his neck and ignored her, could he still be called a man? But Pang Xiao thought for a long time, but he couldn't think of a good way to solve the problem. It really made him mentally and physically exhausted. Wang Yi is back. When Pang Xiao entered Snow Pear Courtyard, Qiu Lu, who was walking towards the small kitchen, raised her voice to greet him. She bowed to Pang Xiao. Pang Xiao waved his hand. He stood in the courtyard and asked in a low voice, "Where is Wang Fei?" Wang Fei just came back. She's eating fruit with the 2 young masters." Pang Xiao nodded. He hesitated and then strode up the steps to enter the door. When he entered the room, the 2 children were like 2 happy little puppies. They bounced out of the trees. Father, father. Father, Hug. Yes. Pang Zhao's heart was about to melt. He hugged one, then the other. He hugged the two soft children in each arm. His mood was much better. Qin Yining came out of the room with an exquisite white porcelain bowl. The bowl was filled with Bingtang's specially made fruit and vegetables. Come, whose turn is it now? Zhao Guober turned his head and buried his face in Pang Zhao's arms. Han Gu exclaimed, "It's Big Brother." Qin Yining walked over with a smile. Zhao Guober began to kick his little legs in Pang Zhao's arms and struggled to jump down. The child was struggling too hard. Pang Zhao was afraid he would strangle him and had to put him down. Zhao Guober simply turned around and ran away. He kept shouting in a childish voice, "Don't eat, don't eat." Qin Yining chased after him with the small bowl. "No, we agreed. You and little brother will each have a bite." Zhao Guober can't go back on his word. "Mother, I'm not eating." Zhao Gu hid under the table. Chapter 889. Pang Zhao watched as Qin Yining mischievously chased after Brother Zhao and played hide-and-seek around the table. Her watery almond-shaped eyes flashed with a sly light. Then, she looked at Brother Zhao, who was so serious that he was about to cry. She liked him so much that her heart ached. Sister Yi was such a good person, but she was always wronged because of his incompetence. Qin Yining finally caught Brother Zhao. She hugged the child and rested for a long time before feeding him the last mouthful of vegetable and fruit puree. Brother Zhao opened his mouth and ate it. His little mouth was still pouting, and he looked unhappy. Pang Zhao had watched enough of the commotion and played with the two children for a while. Seeing that they were tired, he asked the wet nurse to take the children to rest. Only the husband and wife were left in the room. Pang Zhao pulled Qin Yining into his arms and kissed her cheek lovingly. "You've been wronged. It's nothing. It's just a misunderstanding." Qin Yining hugged Pang Zhao's waist and looked up at him. She tiptoed and pecked his chin. Her eyes curved as she said, "I know old madam's temper. She just has a bad mouth. Moreover, today was a complete accident. She didn't set me on fire on purpose. Ji Yun's hand has been checked by Bingtang. She'll recover after 2 days of medicine." Pang Zhao looked down at Qin Yining silently. After a long time, he hugged her tiredly and rubbed his cheek against her neck like a coquettish big cat. Pang Zhao's voice was muffled. "Sister Yi, don't say that. I know you've been wronged. I've just asked about it. I'm too incompetent and didn't do a good job in these matters. That's why you've always been wronged. If it weren't for me, you wouldn't have been kidnapped by Si Qin. You wouldn't have been slandered later. At the end of the day, you can't be blamed for these things. It's because of me that you ended up in this state." Qin Yining shook his head with a smile and patted Pang Zhao's arched back with his fair hand. "Don't let your imagination run wild. Why did you have to do such a bad job? You've already done very well. There are countless people in the world who envy me for being able to marry you. But not many people know how dangerous it was to marry me, and even fewer people know how much you suffered after marrying me." Pang Zhao shook her head. "You don't have to comfort me. I know it's my fault. Father-in-law and mother-in-law must be furious, right? Their anger is only temporary. We're a family after all. My parents won't be so calculative." Pang Zhao pursed his lips and did not speak. After a long time, he said, "I don't even have the face to see my father-in-law. Don't think too much about it. Father-in-law and father-in-law are also fathers. Why would parents care about these things with their children? Moreover, father is not an unreasonable person. What does this matter have to do with you? How can it have nothing to do with me?" Pang Xiao sighed deeply and pulled Qin Yining to sit down by the bed. He grabbed her hand and played with it in his rough and slender palm. Father-in-law agreed to marry you to me because he wanted me to treat you well. He wanted to give you a happy life. But what kind of life have you been living since you married me? Father-in-law doesn't need to say these things. I know it in my heart. I was too selfish at that time. I shouldn't have dragged you into this. Qin Yining felt sad when she heard Pang Xiao's words, but more than that, she was moved by Pang Xiao's consideration and understanding of her. Qin Yining pretended to be angry and said, "What? Don't tell me you regret marrying me." "Of course not." Pang Xiao smiled and scratched her nose. "I haven't done many successful things in my life. The most successful thing is to have you as my wife. You are smarter than a counselor. Because of your advice, I don't know how many risks I avoided. Anyway, we got married. It's a win for me, but a loss for you." "Well, did you eat honey just now?" Qin Yining smiled and said, "You don't have to say these things. Husband and wife are one. I can't help you fight a war, so I can only talk in vain. We're a family. There's nothing to gain or lose. I just hope that our family can be safe and sound. In the future, we can live together peacefully and happily. We don't have to live in fear anymore. That's enough." Pang Xiao nodded. She never asked for much. But he couldn't give her such simple happiness. Not to mention anything else, he could pacify the world, but he had no way of controlling Yao Shi's wild imagination and her mouth that never knew the depth of her thoughts. The Yao clan, Qin Yining, and family Qin had a feud. Even if everything was over in the future, the Yao clan was likely to cause trouble every few days. Then, how could Qin Yining live a simple and peaceful life? Just like today's incident. It was the Yao clan who caused trouble first, but in the end, his sister Yi had to take a step back and let family Qin tolerate them. He couldn't strangle his biological mother to death. The more Pang Xiao thought about it, the more worried she became. She didn't eat much for dinner. After washing up, Qin Yining went to see the two children. After coaxing them to sleep, she went back to her room to change her clothes and got into bed. Pang Xiao also lay down with Qin Yining. He held her in his arms and gently patted her to coax her to sleep. His cherishing and patient look was just like how Qin Yining coaxed Brother Zhao and Brother Han. His eyes were full of tenderness. Qin Yining slowly fell asleep with his low and magnetic humming. In her sleep, she unconsciously snuggled into his strong and warm arms. She even stretched her slightly cold feet onto his legs. Pang Xiao hugged Qin Yining. Her soft and fragrant body scent filled his breath. The person in his arms was so dependent on him and considerate of him. But even an upright official couldn't resolve family disputes. He wasn't even afraid of bleeding on the battlefield, but when it came to the Yao clan, he was troubled. Today's incident seemed to have come to an end. But he still said in front of his father-in-law and mother-in-law that he would give them an explanation. What explanation was he going to give them? Could it be that he was going to find an excuse to let his mother stay in the guest courtyard and provide her with good food and drink while forgetting all the grievances that Qin Yining suffered in public? It was his mother who bullied him first. It was also his mother who spoke viciously and slandered Qin Yining's chastity. She even looked down on the entire family Qin. His own mother couldn't be beaten or scolded. She had just been brought out of the farmstead and she had already caused such a ruckus. Pang Xiao really didn't know what to do. He could go and kowtow to his father-in-law and mother-in-law to apologize, but this mistake was ultimately committed by the Yao clan. Would his perfunctory attitude be effective? Pang Xiao stared blankly at the canopy. He couldn't help but sigh softly. In order to let Qin Yining sleep comfortably, he had maintained that position ever since Qin Yining found a comfortable position in his arms. However, no matter how comfortable the pillow was, Qin Yining had already closed his eyes. He still heard Pang Zhao's sigh. As soon as he heard Pang Zhao's sigh, Qin Yining immediately woke up. She rested her head on Pang Zhao's shoulder and didn't move at all. Qin Yining knew that Pang Zhao was worried. He also knew what Pang Zhao was worried about. However, similar things happened again and again today. Was Qin Yining really not angry or aggrieved at all? If he really didn't feel anything, then Qin Yining would be a wooden man. She was angry, aggrieved, ashamed, and resentful. She also had many ways to take revenge on the Yao clan. However, because she still had her reason, she could only endure these things. For the sake of the overall situation, she could only pretend that she didn't care. Qin Yining really wanted to see what Pang Zhao would do. She really wanted Pang Zhao to teach the Yao clan a lesson. Only then could her grievances be completely relieved. However, now she was lying in Pang Zhao's arms in the middle of the night. This man, who could cover her with a quilt even if the sky fell down, couldn't sleep. Qin Yining's heart ached. Things outside were already very chaotic. Pang Zhao had to command the 100,000 soldiers of the South Pacifying Army, and so many people were eyeing him covetously. He was working so hard outside, and when he returned home, he couldn't have a comfortable and peaceful environment. He also had to worry about the discord in his family. Qin Yining didn't want Pang Zhao to suffer this kind of grievance. Qin Yining, who had just woken up, had a kind of indescribable hoarseness and softness in her voice. She was as delicate as a kitten. Pang Zhao suddenly came back to his senses. He gently patted Qin Yining's back with his big hand and asked softly, "What's wrong? Are you thirsty?" Qin Yining shook his head and asked, "Why haven't you slept yet?" "No, I just woke up." "Nonsense." Qin Yining turned over and lay on Pang Zhao's body. He smiled and said, "You're coaxing me again. We are husband and wife. Do you think I don't know when you're asleep and when you're awake?" Pang Zhao couldn't help laughing. He shook his head and said, "Well, I know my sister Yi is the best. Come and lie down. I'm sleepy too." Qin Yining couldn't help shaking his head and sighing, "Well, I know what you're thinking and why you can't sleep. Don't worry. Our family won't be separated. Not to mention my ability, my father will definitely come up with a suitable way for our two families to live safely in Siya. I understand. I've always known my father-in-law's ability. I also believe that he has this ability. So, you don't have to worry about my father holding any grudges. Because no matter what, his principles won't change." I know. Pang Zhao said with a smile. Qin Yining said again, "Since you know this, then there's another thing you're worried about." Qin Yining smiled and lay on Pang Zhao's chest. His long raven hair spread over his back and Pang Zhao's chest and arms. "Don't worry. I'll go and apologize to the old madam tomorrow. Even if my father has the intention, the two families still need an opportunity to reconcile. I believe that if I apologize, the old madam won't pursue this matter anymore." Pang Zhao's heart softened when he heard this. It was as if his whole body had fallen onto a soft and warm cotton wool. It was indeed a perfect way for the younger generation to apologize to the elder. This way, the Yao clan would be able to pass on the surface and wouldn't continue to be entangled. The storm between them could also be resolved in the shortest time possible. If he was selfish, he could agree and let Qin Yining go. However, Pang Zhao couldn't do such a thing. Qin Yining had suffered such a great grievance. In order to not make things difficult for him, he even took the initiative to make such a request. If he shamelessly agreed on the spot, then he would be bullying Qin Yining. Chapter 890. Pang Xiao sat up and hugged Qin Yining in his arms. He said in a low voice, "What's there to apologize for?" "Apologize. This matter isn't your fault. You're not the one who should apologize. You're not allowed to go." His tone was fierce. However, Qin Yining was amused by his expression. "All right, I'm a junior. It's not shameful to apologize to an elder. This matter is settled." Qin Yining covered his mouth and yawned. He pushed Pang Xiao to lie down. "Hurry up and sleep. Otherwise, you'll go out with 2 dark circles under your eyes tomorrow. Those who don't know will think that I'm punishing you by not allowing you to sleep." Pang Xiao burst out laughing. The mountain that was pressing on his heart seemed to have been removed in an instant. He lay down, turned over, and hugged Qin Yining in his arms again. He kissed her forehead lovingly. "Be good. Go to sleep." Qin Yining closed her eyes and hugged Pang Xiao's waist. She grabbed his snow-white underwear and quickly fell asleep. She didn't know that after she fell asleep, Pang Xiao still couldn't sleep. Early the next morning, Qin Yining dressed up and instructed Bing Tang to apply medicine for Ji Yun. After everything was done, he went to old Madam's place to pay his respects. The entire family knew about yesterday's matter. However, everyone was well-mannered and didn't talk about it. Perhaps it was because Qin Huayuan was at home, so everyone in the family restrained themselves. Qin Yining bowed to old Madam. He also asked Brother Han and Brother Zhao to bow to her. The whole family couldn't close their mouths from smiling because of the 2 children's charmingly naive appearance. Qin Huayuan took the opportunity to say with a smile, "Mother, our luggage is ready. I think it's the same for our in-laws' side. Why don't we prepare some food and wine today and have a reunion dinner together?" As soon as Qin Huayuan said this, everyone nodded in agreement. Although it was called a reunion dinner, it was actually a farewell dinner. No matter what, they were about to part ways. The whole family was somewhat reluctant to part with Qin Yining and Pang Xiao. After all, once they left, Pang Xiao and Qin Yining would be left to fight alone. They did not know when they would meet again. Qin Yining smiled and said, "Then I'll send someone to invite old Master Yao and the others." When Qin Huayuan saw that his daughter didn't seem to have any grudges, he couldn't help but sigh inwardly at Qin Yining's maturity and sensibility. Because only when one grew up would one realize that sometimes, a family didn't necessarily have to fight for a winner. If one won alone, but destroyed the harmony of the family, it couldn't be considered a victory. Only when one achieved one's goal would it be considered a true victory. Taking a small step back could achieve greater things. Many people knew which one was more important, but there were very few who could truly control their emotions. Pang Xiao was very ashamed. Today, he lowered his head and didn't say anything. When Qin Huayuan saw this, he really didn't want to make things difficult for Pang Xiao. He also didn't want to spoil the relationship between the young couple. He smiled and said, "Today, you're not in a hurry to go to the military camp, right? In any case, you can go after the banquet." Pang Xiao was very happy that his father-in-law took the initiative to talk to him. He nodded and said, "Yes, Xiaoyu, father." His gratitude was very complicated. Qin Huayuan understood and was very happy. "What are you talking about? It's a small matter. Remember, no matter what, we're still a family." "Yes." Qin Huayuan's words moved Pang Xiao so much that his eyes were a little hot. He had a wife who understood the big picture and a family that was so sensible. If he didn't appreciate it, even the heavens wouldn't let him. When he went back, he had to make it clear to the Yao clan. Whether it was to persuade them emotionally, reason with them, or just scare them directly, he definitely couldn't let the Yao clan continue to cause trouble in the desert. Qin Yining asked Bing Tang to personally go to the guest courtyard. Mrs. Ma knew that Bing Tang was the most capable person by Qin Yining's side. When she heard that the in-laws were holding a banquet and even invited them to go together, she immediately let out a long sigh of relief. Okay, tell her that we'll go later. Oh. Then I'll take my leave. Bing Tang bowed to Mrs. Ma and Yao Qinggu with a smile. Her almond-shaped eyes looked around and didn't see the Yao clan in the room. She didn't show any emotions on her face and left respectfully. Yao Qinggu was a little unhappy. This Qin clan was really putting on airs. Could it be that they were sure that they wouldn't fall out with them? Did she really think that she was a noble princess consort? She invited the elders to a banquet and actually arranged for a little girl to come. Mrs. Ma looked at Yao Qinggu's long face and sneered but didn't say anything. She had lived with the Yao clan for most of her life. When she was young, she knew that Yao Qinggu was a little smart and had a good character. However, as time passed, Yao Qinggu became more and more scheming. Now, he even tricked his daughter into this state. Mrs. Ma sighed. It was precisely because she was too stupid and didn't have any ability that she led him to this state. Yao Qinggu didn't know what his old wife was thinking. He was calculating in his heart and finally came to the conclusion that the current situation was very good. In any case, the Qin clan didn't want to do anything to the three of them on the spot. There was still room for future plans. The old couple packed up and when it was time, they prepared to go out. Mrs. Ma had been observing Yao Qinggu. Seeing that he didn't seem to want to bring the Yao clan with him, she couldn't help but ask playfully, "Why, you don't want to bring your precious daughter? She hasn't eaten or drunk anything since yesterday." Yao Qinggu said sternly, "If she made a mistake, she should be punished. She won't starve if she doesn't eat 1 or 2 meals. It's right to let her reflect on herself, so that she won't make any big trouble in the future." Yao Qinggu's words really touched Mrs. Ma's heart. Mrs. Ma was a little suspicious and shook her head. If you had taught her this earlier, she wouldn't have become so crooked. Yao Qinggu didn't answer Mrs. Ma's words and only pursed his lips. The two of them went to the reception hall in silence. Qin Yining had been waiting at the door for a long time. When he saw the two of them coming, he quickly went to greet them and respectfully bowed. "Old master, grandmother, granddaughter-in-law, and my mother were preparing for the banquet, so I didn't personally come to greet the two of you. Please forgive me, old master and grandmother." Yao Qinggu said with a smile, "Aren't you being too formal by saying this? There are so many people in the Qin clan. It's not easy to arrange a banquet and think about everyone eating well. Besides, we're all family, so we don't care about etiquette." Qin Yining smiled with curved eyebrows and eyes. "Yes, thank you for your understanding, Grandpa." Mrs. Ma went forward and pulled Qin Yining's hand to go to the reception hall. Qin Yining looked behind the two of them. "Grandmother, where's my mother-in-law? Why didn't she come with the two of you?" When Yao Qinggu heard Qin Yining mention the Yao clan, he immediately became alert. He narrowed his eyes and looked at Qin Yining's expression, worried that Qin Yining was holding a grudge and wanted to take revenge. Could it be that today's banquet was a trap? Yao Qinggu almost couldn't control himself and wanted to go back. Qin Yining saw that Yao Qinggu's expression was strange, so he looked at Mrs. Ma inquiringly. Mrs. Ma said, "Don't worry about her, lest she comes and bully you again. She's like a shit-stirring stick." Yao Qinggu felt that Mrs. Ma's words didn't sound right, so he coughed heavily. Ever since Qin Yining went to the door to greet the guests, Peng Xiao had been standing in the corridor of the reception hall like a log, watching from afar. He pricked up his ears to listen, afraid that Qin Yining would be wronged again. The young couple's behavior amused Qin Huaiyuan and the Sun clan, who were only a window away. Qin Huaiyuan had already comforted the Sun clan last night. Qingpe had carefully analyzed that if the Yao clan made trouble again in the future, he would tell the Sun clan how to deal with them. Therefore, after a night, the depression in the Sun clan's heart had long disappeared. They even somewhat hoped that the Yao clan would make trouble again, so that they could find a chance to vent their anger for Sister Yi. They clearly saw that Pang Shao was depressed today. Now that their daughter took the initiative to talk to the old madam of the in-laws' family, while their son-in-law stood in the corridor and watched for fear that their daughter would be wronged, the Sun clan and Qin Huayuan were in a better mood. They walked out of the reception hall and greeted them with a smile. "Old Master Yao, old madam." Qin Huayuan saluted and said with a smile, "Why don't you come in and sit? The wine and dishes are ready, and the banquet is about to begin." When Madame Ma saw the kind smiles on Qin Huayuan and Madame Sun's faces, it was as if nothing had happened. Madame Ma was moved and held Madame Sun's hand. Yao Qinggu's reaction was exactly the opposite. The alarm in his heart was ringing. Bad, bad. Qin Huayuan's attitude, was he holding back something bad? Qin Yining turned around and said to Qin Huayuan, "Father, I just said that my mother-in-law didn't come today." Pang Shao also walked forward and looked at Mrs. Ma inquiringly. Qin Huayuan said with a smile, "Mrs. Ma must still be angry with Sister Yi." "No, don't say that." Yao Qinggu hurriedly waved his hand. Qin Yining blushed and said, "In fact, yesterday was really a misunderstanding. It was my ignorance that made old madam so angry. I've been waiting for them to arrive so that I can apologize." Mrs. Ma felt sorry for Qin Yining and hurriedly said, "Good boy, I know your heart and I know you have been wronged. To tell you the truth, your troublesome mother-in-law is kneeling in the wing room as punishment." Qin Yining was surprised. How can she do that? Yao Qinggu said righteously, "Why can't she do that? She acted like that, throwing a tantrum without distinguishing between right and wrong, speaking without thinking and hurting people. She deserves to be punished to kneel." Qin Huayuan hurriedly said anxiously, "That can't be done. It is my daughter who should apologize to Mrs. Ma. How can she be punished to kneel?" What he said, Yao Qinggu's pupils shrank. He secretly cursed this official for being so unforgiving. Qin Huayuan's words were clearly for the Yao clan, but in reality, he was blaming Yao Qinggu for being a busybody. He didn't think clearly and only punished her to kneel. Wouldn't the Yao clan hate Qin Yining even more? Yao Qinggu was also a quick-witted and eloquent person, but at this moment, he couldn't say a word to deal with it. Qin Huayuan thought for a while and said, "How about this? Let's go and pick up Mrs. In-law as a family and let Sister Yi apologize to Mrs. In-law. This reunion banquet should be a family reunion no matter what." Mrs. Ma felt guilty and felt that Qin Yining had been wronged. Therefore, she held Qin Yining's hand with one hand and the Sun clan's hand with the other. Her face was full of guilt. Qin Yining and the Sun clan couldn't help but feel sorry for this kind-hearted and righteous old woman. They didn't want to make things difficult for her anymore. Yao Qinggu, on the other hand, secretly sighed in relief. As long as the family Qin was willing to give them a way out, it was fine. After one night, the Yao clan should have thought it through. If there was a way out, it would be easier for the family to talk and do things when they met in the future. Otherwise, if they quarreled, how would they get along when they went to see Ye? Chapter 891. Qin Yining laughed straightforwardly. "Hey, what's there to feel wronged about? What's the point of separating our families so clearly? No matter who's right or wrong, it's still my fault as a junior. I'll go apologize to him later." Yao Qinggu choked. He secretly thought that this family Qin father and daughter both spoke in such a manner. Qin Yining's words were actually the simplest principle of the world. No matter what family it was, as long as the younger generation had a conflict with the elder, the younger generation would be the one to be criticized. He had also experienced this when he was young, but now the tables had turned and he was the elder. Yao Qinggu's mind raced. With a face full of admiration and pity, he complimented, as expected of a young lady from a large family. The daughter of wise Pan and is indeed extraordinary. Qin Huaiyuan laughed and said that he didn't dare. Pang Xiao, on the other hand, could tell that Yao Qinggu's words were not quite right. From the look in his grandfather's eyes, could it be that he deliberately mentioned the words, wise Panin? One had to know that back then, it was precisely because of Qin Huaiyuan's plan to sow discord that the emperor of northern Ji had used against him that wise Panin became famous. Pang Xiao was extremely intelligent. How could he not understand the hidden meaning in everyone's words just now? Sister Yi was willing to suffer for the sake of the harmony of the family, but he couldn't play dumb. He immediately said, I'll go with them. I'll also kowtow to the old madam. Although he said kowtow, his expression clearly indicated that if the Yao clan did anything wrong, he would be on the side. He wasn't afraid that Qin Yining would be wronged again. Madame Ma and the Sun clan were very straightforward and didn't have such meticulous thoughts. Madame Ma was even more happy. The family didn't completely fall out with each other. It was all thanks to Sister Yi's willingness to compromise. In this way, Qin Huaiyuan went into the room to inform the old madam. Then, he and the Sun clan took the servants and accompanied Qin Yining and Yao Qinggu to the guest courtyard. They invited the Yao clan back to the front hall for the reunion banquet. Some things would only be tormented when they were in a dilemma. Once they made a decision, they would be in a good mood. Although Qin Yining was on the way to see the Yao clan, he was thinking about what the two children would eat at the banquet later. Soon, they arrived at the door of the guest courtyard. A servant was guarding the door. When she saw Qin Huaiyuan and the Sun clan coming, she hurriedly bowed respectfully and looked a bit nervous. Old Madam Yao, Old Madam, Old Master Yao, Old Madam, Old Madam. Get up. What's wrong? Qin Huaiyuan could tell that something was wrong with the old woman's expression. The servant glanced at Yao Qinggu and Madame Ma hesitantly and whispered, It's nothing. It's just that it's not quiet inside. It's not quiet. Qin Huaiyuan was puzzled. Yao Qinggu and Madame Ma's hearts skipped a beat. Was the Yao clan making trouble again when they weren't here? They hurriedly entered the courtyard. As soon as they stepped on the clean tiles in the courtyard, they heard screams, curses, and smashing sounds coming from the wing room. What are you? Whose dogs are you? How dare you not let me eat? It's not that we don't let you eat. It's old Master Yao's order. Without his order, how could we let you eat? How about you endure for a while? When old Master Yao comes back and has orders, we will immediately prepare food for you. Is that okay? Bah. Bullshit. I think you were sent by that little bitch to torture me. That bitch holds a grudge and I exposed her shortcomings. Now she wants to harm me like this. Do you think I don't know my father? He loves me the most. He said that he punished me by making me kneel and not letting me eat. It's just empty talk. When did he ever let me go hungry? Only you two dogs don't know anything. Just wait. When my son comes, I will take your heads and kick them like balls. Oh, old Madame Yao, please calm down. With a crash, some unknown wooden object was smashed, followed by the sound of broken porcelain, crashing and clanking, causing the few people in front of the door to stop in their tracks. Qin Huaiyuan and the Sun clan's faces immediately darkened. Pang Xiao held Qin Yining with one hand and didn't allow her to take a step forward. She clenched her fists so hard that they made cracking sounds. Poor Sister Yi. She had been compromising. He didn't expect that his good mother would criticize her like this behind her back. Madame Ma's face was livid. She raised her foot and was about to kick the door, but Yao Qinggu beat her to it. Shut up. Yao Qinggu pushed open the door and came face to face with Yao Shi standing on a thick mattress. Her hands were holding a blue and white porcelain vase high up in the air, about to smash it. The floor was covered in broken pieces, and the chair and table had been overturned. It was clear just how much trouble she had caused. The two servants who were ordered to watch Yao Clan had already hidden in the corner and were trembling. Yao Shi looked at the people that had come to the door and finally stopped what she was doing. She threw the porcelain bottle to the ground, and there was another crashing sound. "Father! These two dogs of family Qin made things difficult for me. They slap." Yao Qinggu slapped Yao Clan's face hard. Yao Clan was stunned on the spot. She bit her tongue and a trace of blood came out of the corner of her mouth. "You evil creature! Kneel down." Yao Clan's tears were shining. She bit her lips and whimpered to avoid the broken porcelain. Yao Qinggu scolded, "Why did I punish you? It seems like you didn't use your brain at all." "Woo! I didn't do anything wrong. You still dare to talk back. You want to make trouble. Fine, I'll leave this place for you. When we go to Shiyu, this place will be left for you. You can do whatever you want." Yao Qinggu was so angry that his hands trembled. He angrily turned around and strode away. He tripped and almost fell on the broken porcelain on the floor. Pang Xiao hurriedly supported Yao Qinggu and led the old man out of the messy room. Yao Clan fell on the cushion and sobbed. She was terrified. Listening to Yao Qinggu's words, they were going to leave her alone and not take her to Shiyu. Yao Clan was really frightened by Yao Qinggu's words. She hurriedly got up, walked around the broken porcelain vase on the floor, and pulled Yao Qinggu to the door. Father, I know I was wrong. I won't do it again." Yao Qinggu looked at Yao Clan's swollen cheeks, blood seeping from the corner of her mouth, and tears and snot all over her face. In the end, he still felt distressed. But compared to their future life and death, which was more important? Yao Qinggu steeled his heart and didn't say anything. Instead, he looked at Qin Huayuan questioningly. Qin Huayuan had a smile on his face, but his aura was imposing. It was as if this wasn't an ordinary room of the family Qin, but the morning court in the Golden Imperial Palace. No matter how shrewd Yao Qinggu was, he had never seen Qin Huayuan with such an imposing manner. He became more and more nervous. This time, it was completely over. Yu Ping's scolding was so unpleasant that the whole family had heard it behind their backs. Looking at Qin Huayuan's expression, and then looking at Madame Sun's expression, who looked as if she wanted to eat someone alive, could it be that all their efforts had been for naught? "Since we've discussed it, let's go to the banquet." Qin Huayuan smiled and took the lead in calling the Sun clan to walk in front. Go to the banquet. It was already like this, who would still be able to eat? Yao Qinggu was very nervous. In order to survive, they had to go to Xia. But they really went to Xia. He was really afraid that Qin Huayuan would find a way to kill him. Qin Yining and Pang Xiao supported Mrs. Ma on both sides. At this time, Mrs. Ma was so angry that she was about to cry. Qin Yining hurriedly comforted her, "Grandma, don't take it to heart. The old madam must be hungry." Mrs. Ma sobbed and 2 lines of salty tears flowed down her face. She raised her old hand and wiped her face. Choking, she said, "Lassie, Okay, Grandma, don't be sad. It's nothing." The more Qin Yining persuaded, the more upset Mrs. Ma became. They walked in front, and Yao Qinggu followed behind Mrs. Ma with his hands behind his back. Only the Yao clan was crying and covering their faces as they walked towards the reception hall where the banquet was held. The banquet was already prepared in the reception hall. Because it was a special reunion banquet, there was no need to pay attention to the rules of having so many seats. Old Madam asked the screen to be removed and 3 tables were set up in the hall. At this time, the family Qin members, old and young, were all present. Seeing Qin Yining and Pang Xiao coming back from afar, Brother Xiao and Brother Han ran over happily with their short legs. Mother, mother. Daddy, Brother Han wants to be carried. The children's voices were sweet and childish, making the tense atmosphere in the group relax. Pang Xiao and Qin Yining each carried the 2 little guys. Qin Yining smiled and shook Brother Xiao. Oh, my baby Brother Xiao seems to have grown a little. Mother. Brother Xiao hugged Qin Yining's neck and leaned his face against Mrs. Ma, who was close to him. Great-grandma. Ah. Good child, good child. Mrs. Ma was very sad and immediately burst into tears. Brother Xiao was shocked and used his small hands to wipe away Mrs. Ma's tears. He was also about to cry. Great-grandma, don't cry. Great-grandma isn't crying. Great-grandma is happy. Oh, my good grandson, let great-grandma hug you. Mrs. Ma hurriedly wiped her face with her sleeves and held back her tears. She smiled and took Brother Xiao into her arms. He was such a good child who looked so much like Pang Xiao's child. Why did the Yao clan always doubt his bloodline, hate the 2 brothers, and be so mean to the Qin clan? Why did she not understand the daughter she raised more and more? Brother Han blinked his big eyes curiously and poked his small head out of Pang Xiao's arms. Great-grandma. Great-grandma is here. Great-grandma is happy. Why do you adults cry when you're unhappy and cry when you're happy? For a moment, Mrs. Ma didn't know how to answer. Brother Han opened his small hands and said to Qin Huayuan, Grandfather, hug. Grandmother, Brother Han wants to be hugged. Qin Huayuan's mood improved a lot. He took Brother Han, who was asking for hugs everywhere, and said with a smile, quickly go inside. At this time, the family Qin people had already stood up and greeted them with a smile. Everyone had heard about what happened in the Fu yesterday, but this was the chief branch's private matter. Everyone tacitly expressed respect and didn't talk about it. Now, they saw that Yao Qinggu's expression was normal, but Mrs. Ma and the Yao clan had cried. The Yao clan's face was also suspiciously swollen. Everyone was puzzled, but because of their upbringing, they didn't show it. Qin Huayuan politely led Old Master Yao and Mrs. Ma to sit next to the old madam. Chapter 892. Qin Huayuan, second Old Master, and third Old Master raised their cups together. It's rare for our family to be able to reunite. Let us 3 brothers toast to Mother and the 2 elders. Old Madam's hair was already silvery white. She was wearing a tea-gold gown with a gray mouse fur collar, which made her complexion look a bit more rosy. Old Madam smiled and nodded repeatedly. Good, good. She raised her cup and clinked it with Yao Qinggu and Madame Ma. After the elders drank together, Qin Yuk, Qin Han, and the other men of the family Qin also began to take turns toasting. The women were even more lively as they toasted each other. The scene became lively. The Yao clan was next to the Sun clan, so the women of the family Qin were all around her. At this moment, she was still feeling wronged, and the expression on her face was very ugly. Qin Yining stood up with a smile and toasted the Yao clan. Old Madam, your daughter-in-law toasts you. Yao clan raised her head and saw Qin Yining's smiling face. She felt depressed and panicked in her heart. Her face was swollen from the slap. This lowly wench must have come to watch the show. Yao clan thought of this, so she didn't raise her wine cup. Qin Yining's eyes darkened a bit. Under Yao Qinggu's gaze, which seemed to be watching a good show, he smiled and joked. Old madam, you're not still angry with me, are you? You see, my cloak and skirt have been destroyed. You can take it as a punishment. As the saying goes, if you don't have a tongue, you won't touch your teeth. Your daughter-in-law is young and ignorant. Old madam, you've walked on more bridges than I have. You're a great person and don't mind my transgressions. Please forgive me. Her tone was sweet and naive, like a little girl acting coquettishly with her elders. The people around her who didn't know the inside story couldn't help but laugh. Yao Clan was just about to scold back when she felt someone staring at her. As soon as she raised her head, she saw Yao Chingu's eyes full of warning. Thinking of what Yao Chingu said just now, it seemed that he really had made up his mind to keep her. Yao Clan's anger was replaced by fear again. She unconsciously raised her wine cup and toasted with Qin Yining. Yao Chingu saw that Yao Clan finally learned their lesson this time. He quietly sighed in relief and looked at Qin Huaiyuan nervously, and also took the initiative to raise his wine cup. His intention to take the initiative to apologize was too obvious. Qin Huaiyuan raised his glass with both hands and clinked it against Yao Chingu's. He smiled and said, "Old Master Yao, just as Sister Yi said just now, there's always a time when the tongue doesn't touch the teeth. No matter what, we're still family." Yao Chingu smiled and nodded repeatedly. Qin Huaiyuan stood up and raised his wine cup, saying, "Today, we're able to reunite as a family. How many twists and turns have we gone through? I'm sure everyone has an account in their hearts. Here, I propose that we all drink together. Eldest brother, I toast you. Eldest uncle, nephew toasts you. Second master, third master, Qin Han, Qin Yu, the Sun clan, second madam, Han's second young mistress, and Qin Huaining all stood up and drank a cup of wine together." Qin Huaiyuan suddenly sighed with emotion. The members of the Qin clan who are gathered here today have all gone through near-death experiences. When this place was still dying, the situation in the imperial court was treacherous, and Qin's mansion became a target several times. That bloody incident made us lose a lot of family members. Qin Huaiyuan turned to Yao Chingu and Madame Ma, saying, Old madam, you two may not know that at that time, our family Qin was implicated in the matter in the imperial court. More than half of our family members were killed. The blood that flowed out that day gathered into a stream and dyed the ground of Qin's mansion red. Half of Qin's mansion was burned down by fire. The Qin's mansion where we are now was renovated by Sister Yi in private with her own money. Yao Chingu and Madame Ma's hearts were particularly heavy. That day, Qin's mansion was involved in such a dispute, and blood flowed like a river in the mansion. But who could say that the tragedy of Qin's mansion was not the future of their masters? If they stayed here, sooner or later, they would walk the same path as Qin's mansion. Yao Chingu cherished the opportunity to go to Shiyu with his family Qin more than now. Qin Huaiyuan continued, after that, family Qin moved to the capital and experienced another bumpy experience. Because of my mistake, Qin's mansion was targeted again. That day, I narrowly escaped death in the north. The hardships I went through are indescribable. If Sister Yi hadn't arranged for someone to rescue me in time, I'm afraid I would have died. Not only did I lose my life, but I also implicated my family members. Later, our Qin's mansion was able to safely leave the capital. Sister Yi stayed behind and secretly sent everyone here out. Qin Huaiyuan's voice suddenly choked when he said this. When he looked at Qin Yining, his eyes seemed to be filled with tears. Sister Yi, you are a good child. When I wasn't here, you helped your second uncle and third uncle a lot. Many things in the family also depended on you. You protected our family for me and almost sacrificed yourself several times. You sacrificed a lot, whether it was money or energy. You did so many things in silence. I am grateful to you, but I feel sorry for you. Qin Yining's eyes immediately became moist. She quickly stood up and shook her head. Father, why are you saying this? We are a family. Why do you have to say this? Qin Huaiyuan shook his head and walked to Qin Yining's side with a glass of wine in his hand. He patted her on the shoulder and turned to say to everyone present, this time, the desert oasis that we're all moving to was discovered by Sister Yi in the early years after she was kidnapped by the Tatar Eugene Khan. That day, when I was taken to the oasis by Sister Yi's subordinate, the hall master of the Qingtian Alliance, I also heard about what happened at Shiyu. Sister Yi really had a narrow escape from death that day. But fortunately, everything turned out well. Now, Sister Yi left people there to manage it. The people there still believe that Sister Yi is a goddess bestowed to them by the heavens, and that Jishi is the real king there. So, after our family moved there, we were able to live a noble life. It was all thanks to the karma between Sister Yi and Jishi. When everyone heard this, they couldn't help but look at Qin Yining with curiosity and admiration. What she had experienced was far beyond all the other women. Her ability was outstanding, and many men couldn't even compare to her. Qin Huaiyuan patted Qin Yining's shoulder and said, this time, all of us are going to move away. Sister Yi and Jishi have to bear all the dangers and hold up the sky for us. And we are going to live a peaceful life, but we still have to be under the shadow of these two children. As a father, I am incompetent. I can't protect my own child, and instead put her in danger time and time again. Whether it was when Sister Yi was almost caught by the demon empress to eat meat in the Dian dynasty, or when she was trapped in the palace in the Dezhou dynasty and was locked in the Ci and palace by the empress dowager, who didn't give her food or water, and wanted to starve her to death. Qin Huaiyuan's tone was too sorrowful, and tears fell down. Everyone present couldn't help but shed tears. Brother Zhao and Brother Han were affected by the atmosphere, and they held their small mouths and sobbed. The Sun Clan and Second Madam each hugged and comforted them, but their tears fell more fiercely than the children. My daughter had a hard life. When she was just born, she was taken away and left in the mountains. She was adopted by a kind person, and her life was saved. When she was young, she suffered a lot. When she was 8, she lost her family. In order to avoid the chaos of war, she went to the mountains alone. Qin Huaiyuan shook his head and closed his eyes. An 8-year-old child, only 8 years old. She survived alone, and when she returned home, she was called a barbarian. As a father, I was muddle-headed. I couldn't protect her from the beginning. She was burdened by me, and now she sacrificed herself for everyone's safety. Qin Huaiyuan's face was covered in tears, and he choked with sobs. The reception hall was filled with sobs. Qin Yining wiped his tears and hurriedly supported Qin Huaiyuan's arm. Father, why are you saying these things? It's all in the past. That's right, it's all in the past. You're lucky, and you've endured all the hardships. You're generous, and you've forgotten how much you've suffered. But as a father, I can't forget. You were taken away when you were an infant, and in the end, you were called a barbarian. All of this was caused by me, but you had to bear the infamy. Later, you were kidnapped by the Khan of Anari, and that woman wanted to kill you. You escaped with great difficulty, but there were still people who doubted your chastity. What did you do wrong? You didn't do anything wrong. You suffered so much, but there were still people who misunderstood you and scolded you. All of this was caused by your father's incompetence and dereliction of duty. I feel terrible, and I feel terrible when I hear people scolding you. Qin Huaiyuan had always been steady, and it was rare for him to reveal such emotions. He kept all of his worries in his heart. He was extremely intelligent, and when he encountered difficulties, he could always find the most appropriate way to solve them. But the more he was like this, the more he restrained himself, and the more he suppressed his emotions. Once it burst out, such intense emotions could infect everyone. Everyone in the Qin family was shedding tears. Even Yao Qinggu, who had a heart of stone, had tears brimming in his eyes. Dowager Duchess and Qin Huaining were sobbing uncontrollably. Qin Huaining walked to Qin Yining's side and took the initiative to hold her hand. The corners of his lips quivered for a long time, and he said in a hoarse voice, "I'm sorry." Qin Yining shook her head. There was a smile on her face, but her tears kept flowing. "It's okay, it's not your fault." Qin Huaining looked at Qin Yining's teary eyes and couldn't help but hug Qin Yining. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have treated you like that day. I knew long ago that I was wrong." Qin Yining smiled and hugged Qin Huaining back. "It's okay, I didn't blame you long ago. If that situation had happened to me back then, I would also have felt a sense of crisis. Moreover, it's best to know that you're wrong and change for the better. In the future, as long as you're well, I will." At that time, bandits broke into our house. Qin Yining shook her head and didn't let Qin Huaining mention what happened back then. It was enough that she felt guilty in her heart. Chapter 893. Qin Huaining shook his head with a smile. No, one who survives a great disaster is bound to have good fortune in the future. Even God couldn't take you away when you were a child. You will be safe in the future. In the future, you will be filial to father and mother. I will get married. Qin Yining burst out laughing at Qin Huaining's words, but tears fell down like beads from a broken necklace. Seeing Qin Yining and Qin Huaining like this, Qin Huaiyuan was relieved. He wiped the tears on his face and said, "Although we are in trouble now, as long as the whole family can get together and work together, we will be able to get through it. Just like us in the past. The reason why I'm saying all this today is not for anything else. After Shiyu, we may never set foot on this land again. At that time, we'll only have each other left. So, we have to unite even more to survive better. Come on, old Master Yao, old Madam, let's toast and drink together." Yao Qinggu and Mrs. Ma were moved to tears by this scene. At this time, they naturally stood up. After Yao Qinggu and Qin Huaiyuan drank this cup of wine, their hanging hearts were completely relieved. Qin Huaiyuan's words stirred up everyone's emotions and made the family Qin united. At the same time, he also expressed his views. Although the family Qin didn't like what the Yao clan did, Qin Huaiyuan at least wanted to unite everyone. This was a safe signal for Yao Qinggu, which made him relax all his vigilance. Today's reunion banquet was also a farewell banquet. The whole family gathered together, toasted each other, and confided in each other. Many small problems in the past were solved today. Qin Yining and Pang Xiao were moved. At the same time, they had to admire Qin Huaiyuan's means. In the future, the in-laws would be more united. At Xia in the future, at least for a few years, there would not be a scattered situation. A few days after the banquet, the family was surprisingly united. However, the Sun clan had cried a few times with Qin Yining. She always thought that Qin Yining and Pang Xiao had something to do and would go later. She didn't expect that this time, it might be a farewell. Qin Yining comforted the Sun clan for a long time. Pang Xiao also repeatedly promised to protect Qin Yining. Later, Madame Zheng brought the women of the Sun clan and rushed over. The Sun clan's attention was then diverted. Xingchang's 7th year, 28th of winter. Under Pang Xiao's arrangement, Qin Huaiyuan led all of the family Qin, Sun family, and Yao family's relatives and servants to secretly leave the Qin manor in batches. Under the appropriate arrangements, they left the docks on a junk ship, beginning the journey of the family Qin to call the wind and summon the rain during the sunset. However, Qin Yining couldn't even go to the docks to see them off. She and Pang Xiao were too big of a target. Who knew how many pairs of eyes were watching them? With great difficulty, Pang Xiao used all kinds of methods to secretly send the family out in batches. She couldn't let her family be in danger again because of her reluctance. However, even if Qin Yining wasn't disheartened enough to think that this separation would be a life and death separation, the pain of separation made her sullen for a few days. Pang Xiao knew that Qin Yining wasn't happy. Other than attentively accompanying her, he had no other choice. Therefore, he went to the barracks to patrol during the day and tried his best to rush back as soon as possible in the afternoon. In any case, this made Qin Yining's mood much better. On the third day of the 12th lunar month, Master Zhong came to the Qin Manor early in the morning. Qin Yining and Pang Xiao just got up and rushed to the front hall without eating breakfast. Master Zhong smiled and said, "Princess Consort, there's news from Huichuan County." Qin Yining said in surprise, "So fast?" "Yes. It's inconvenient for Hall Master Liao and Hall Master Qiao to come back, so they arranged for a trusted subordinate to rush over to deliver the news." "Where is this person?" "Princess Consort, don't be anxious. I've brought him here. He's just outside the room." Qin Yining's eyes lit up. He hurriedly ordered, "Quickly invite him in." Ji Yun curtsied and quickly went out to invite the person. Bing Tang brought Lian Xiaozhou to prepare tea and snacks. On the day of Qin Huayuan's departure, these three people knelt in front of Qin Yining and refused to go to Shiyu. Qiu Lu and Xian Yun also wanted to follow suit. However, Qin Yining entrusted the two children to them and they had no choice but to leave. Now, all the servants in the manor had left. Bing Tang, Ji Yun, and Lian Xiaozhou had more things to do. Not long after, Ji Yun led a young man with a medium build into the room. This young man was wearing a grayish-blue cloth jacket and a felt hat. He was dressed like a manservant. When he saw Qin Yining and Pang Xiao, he bowed respectfully and said, "Greetings, Alliance Master." "Greetings, Wang Yi." Pang Xiao smiled and waved his hand. "There's no need to be so polite." Qin Yining also smiled and said, "Take a seat. We're all brothers and there are no outsiders. There's no need to be so formal." "Yes. Thank you, Alliance Master." The young man sat down next to Master Zhong. Qin Yining first asked him to eat tea and snacks. The young man didn't stand on ceremony and finished 2 plates of snacks in a few bites. He then gulped down a large pot of hot tea. Perhaps it was because of the silence in the room, but he also realized that his behavior was a bit too rude. He scratched his head and laughed. "Alliance Master, you must be joking. What are you talking about? This brother looks familiar. How should I address you?" "My name is Meng Qin. I've always been following Hall Master Qiao. In the past, I even followed Alliance Master to escort your Majesty back to the palace. No wonder I thought you looked so familiar." Qin Yining smiled and said, "Since we're all brothers, I won't beat around the bush. Meng Qin, what news did Hall Master Liao ask you to bring me?" "Oh, right." Meng Qin sat up straight and said seriously, "It's like this. A few days ago, Guan Dahu and Liu Ban suddenly started contacting Hall Master Liao. Hall Master Liao and Hall Master Qiao felt that something was amiss, so they kept an eye on it. These two had followed Hall Master Liao's wife to die in the desert. How could they come back from the dead? We all felt that it was very strange. Hall Master Liao didn't trust the two of them at all. He directly rejected their proposal of discussing a grand plan. However, Hall Master Liao and Hall Master Qiao had a trick up their sleeves. Our Qingtian alliance didn't have any relationship with the two of them, but we still managed to get reliable information out of them. Guess what? It's the money that the incapable ruler of Dian hid, and it's now in Huichuan County. No wonder that old guy wanted to become the county magistrate of Huichuan County. Pang Xiao and Qin Yining's hearts skipped a beat at the same time. However, they still looked indifferent and didn't show any abnormalities. Qin Yining smiled and asked, "Why did the treasure go all the way to Huichuan County?" "That's right." Hall Master Liao was also puzzled. Later, he spent a lot of effort to investigate and found out that Mrs. Liao had taken Guan Dahu and Lu Ban to hide the treasure. Guess how they hid it? Back then, Your Majesty wanted to build the Imperial Mausoleum. Coincidentally, the stone was quarried from the south. The place where Mrs. Liao hid the treasure happened to be nearby. She thought of a way and hid the treasure in the stone bricks of the Imperial Mausoleum. Just like that, the treasure was transported out without anyone knowing. Originally, they thought that the treasure was hidden in the stone. As long as they thought of a way to buy or steal the stone, or even rob it, they could easily avoid all the checkpoints. However, they didn't expect that Mrs. Liao and the two bastards would be caught with you. The two of them and Mrs. Liao were thrown into the desert. They didn't tell Hall Master Liao in detail how they survived. Anyway, Mrs. Liao was dead. Hall Master Liao actually analyzed it with Hall Master Qiao in private. They might have used Mrs. Liao as food in the desert. Later, the two bastards kept thinking of ways to go to Huichuan County to get the stone back. The problem was that the construction in Huichuan County had stopped, and the original county magistrate was also fired. Moreover, the stones looked the same on the outside, and they were all piled up together. If they didn't use any tricks, they wouldn't be able to tell which stone was the problem with the naked eye. Recently, they heard that the war had stopped, and Your Majesty wanted to continue building the Imperial Mausoleum. The two of them came up with this idea. As long as they hired the officials in Huichuan County, they would have a way to find the stone that hid the treasure. Otherwise, if they were late, wouldn't it be easy for the treasure to be exposed? Qin Yining and Pang Xiao were shocked. If it weren't for the inside story, who would have thought that Mrs. Liao had used such a method to transport the treasure under Li Qitian's nose without anyone noticing? What did Hall Leader Liao say? Qin Yining didn't say his own thoughts, but patiently asked Meng Qin. Meng Qin smiled and said, Hall Leader Liao said that the treasure couldn't be obtained by them. The two of them aren't good people, and of course, they couldn't be exposed to Your Majesty. Hall Leader Liao said that Your Majesty is so troublesome even though he doesn't have money. If he has money, who knows what he will do? He spent so much money to build the Imperial Mausoleum, and he didn't even think about what the people were eating. Meng Qin said, and her smile gradually faded. He didn't forget the original intention of the Qing-Tian alliance. Therefore, when he saw the emperor who didn't care if the people were hungry for his imperial mausoleum, he was also angry. However, because the person sitting in front of him was a high-ranking official in the imperial court, he didn't complain. Qin Yining knew the thoughts of most of the people in the alliance, so he didn't say much. After thanking Meng Qin, he asked Ji Yun to arrange a place for Meng Qin and ordered people to prepare food for her. You go rest first. I'll think about what to do about this matter. If there's anything else, I'll have to trouble you. Meng Qin grinned, scratched the back of her head, and said shyly, if there's anything, just tell me. Hall Leader Qiao and Hall Leader Liao said that I'll listen to you. Qin Yining nodded with a smile, and let Ji Yun take this honest young man to rest. When they walked away, Master Zhong breathed a sigh of relief and murmured, I didn't expect the treasure to be transported to Huichuan County in such a way. That Mrs. Liao can be considered a person. Chapter 894. Pang Xiao pondered for a long time and shook his head. This matter isn't easy to deal with. It's like looking for a needle in a haystack to find an abnormal stone brick among a large number of stones. It's not only difficult for us, but it's also difficult for Guan Dahu and Lu Ban. Even if they become county magistrates, they still have to check the stones one by one. After all, the transportation may not be done by their own people. If it's done by their own people and they know the general direction, it'll be better. Yes. Mrs. Liao and the others didn't want this batch of treasure to be transported to Huichuan County. It's just that they didn't expect Wuda Golden Khan to suddenly intervene and kidnap the people. Master Zhong said they contacted Hall Master Liao because they don't have enough people. This matter is really difficult to deal with. It's difficult to find the stones. What's more difficult is that this matter must be carried out secretly. We can't let the people in the imperial court find out anything strange. Qin Yining frowned and looked at Pang Xiao. She said bluntly, if they report this matter to the heavens, His Majesty will do anything for the treasure. He can arrange for more people to search for the treasure. At that time, it will be easy to find the treasure. I'll say something disrespectful, but if this silver is taken by Your Majesty, I think not only you but also Jilan will be in danger. The two of you are the most suspicious. If we don't get rid of you, how can Your Majesty be at ease? Qin Yining's words were very direct. He didn't mean to avoid Master Zhong. Pang Xiao smiled and understood Qin Yining's arrangement. He didn't refute it. Master Zhong's forehead was sweating, but he was only slightly afraid for a while before his eyes became firm. In the Dian dynasty, Duke Dinggua's Sun family had a miserable end. Duke Dinggua was an unyielding hero. In the early years, he worked hard for the Dian. Sun family was full of loyal officials, but in the end, what benefits did they get? For the sake of his own selfishness, the self-indulgent ruler did not care about ethics and morals. Looking at Pang Xiao, who was full of righteousness and awe-inspiring awe, Master Zhong became more and more worried. He broke out in cold sweat and could not help but say, Wang Yi, you have to think of a way. You can't let that person get the treasure. Think about the princess consort and your family. The miserable state of Princess Consort's maternal grandfather's family was a good example. It's hard to conquer the world, but it's even harder to defend it. You have to be more careful. Pang Xiao was very satisfied with Master Zhong, and his heart was filled with joy. This old man had always been by Qin Yining's side with all his heart and soul. Back then, Qin Yining had saved his life, and he had indeed wholeheartedly repaid him. Pang Xiao admired such a loyal elder. You're right. I'll be more careful. When Qin Yining saw Pang Xiao like this, although he had made a decision long ago, he still felt a little sad when he thought about it now. You're all brothers who kowtowed to the ground. Back then, you agreed to overthrow the tyranny of Beiji and return a peaceful life to the people. Back then, on the battlefield, you trusted each other and trusted each other's backs. Why can't you do it now? Pang Xiao sighed and said, if Your Majesty had been content with a corner from the beginning and never had any hopes for the Dian, wouldn't it have been better? Qin Yining shook his head. Wang Yi, have you forgotten what the self-indulgent ruler of the Dian was like? In your heart, don't you think that the people of the Dian are also people? You're only doing it for the people. Yes. I'm doing it for the people. My belief has never changed. I've always wanted to give the people a peaceful and prosperous world. Now, he might even start another war. When he heard Pang Xiao's words, Master Zhong couldn't help but shake his head and sigh. Such a loyal and righteous person was just like the old Duke of Dinggua. Who would have thought that he would gradually be forced to this point? He had been following Qin Yining for a long time, so he was the clearest about Pang Xiao and Qin Yining's experiences. Wang Yi, this old man has something to say. Wang Yi, please listen to this old man. Master Zhong is an old man by Sister Yi's side. Sister Yi trusts you the most, so you're one of us. If you have anything to say, Master Zhong, just say it. Yes, he was an old man by Qin Yining's side. Ever since he followed Qin Yining, everyone knew that he was on Qin Yining's side. This matter wasn't a secret. Even if he felt that it was dangerous now and wanted to take the opportunity to hide, there was no guarantee that when Li Qitian targeted Pang Shao, he would be treated as an accomplice and dealt with. The most taboo thing for people was to be a fence-sitter. Sometimes, if you wanted to benefit from both sides, you'd end up offending both sides. It was better to choose a side. Thinking of this, Master Zhong was even more certain of his previous decision. He bluntly said, Wang Yi, now that the world is unified, it's a unification that's rarely seen in 100 years. Even the Taitan in the north and the southern Yan in the south are no longer a threat. This can be considered one of His Majesty's achievements. But think about it carefully. In the 7 years since His Majesty stepped on the throne, what has he really done for the people? What His Majesty has done the most is consider how to stabilize his own country and how to expand Dezhou's territory. Exorbitant taxes haven't been reduced, but corvée labor is getting more and more serious. His Majesty frequently sends troops to war, but His Majesty hasn't selected talents for the country, nor has he promoted any commercial or political policies to develop the economy. Dezhou is poor, but the people haven't seen His Majesty increase income and reduce expenditure. Instead, he's fixated on Dian's treasures and won't let go of them. He'll even take a bite out of a mosquito's leg if he sees one. Master Zhong's voice had the hoarseness of an old man, but he spoke neither too fast nor too slow. Every word he said was a gem, and it went straight to Qin Yining's heart. Master Zhong is right. Qin Yining smiled appreciatively, then turned to Pang Shao and said with a smile, Wang Yi, I think you understand everything in your heart, but you're too righteous and are often bound by morality. Pang Shao smiled bitterly. Some things were the bottom line in his heart, but reality would push him, step by step, pushing that bottom line closer and closer. Qin Yining said, in this world, there has never been a rule that one must take the surname of another. When Beiji Shou and Dian's Yuqi were in power, they were absurd and tyrannical, but there were people with lofty ideals who rose up and completely overthrew their tyrannical rule. If His Majesty can't be a good emperor who brings happiness to the people, and only cares about whether his throne is stable or not, and blindly abandons the country's industry, and uses the method of farmers guarding their yards to govern a country, then Dezhou can't guarantee that it won't follow the same path as Beiji and Dian. Furthermore, he doesn't think about how to use people to make Dezhou prosper, but he doesn't care about right or wrong, and kills meritorious officials for his own selfish reasons. Even if you and I stretch out our necks to be executed, and follow His Majesty's wishes, it's just to protect the world and temporarily prevent war. But who can guarantee that in the future, there won't be people who can't stand his actions and overthrow him? Master Zhong also nodded in agreement. Wang Fei's words are reasonable. This old man also has the same thoughts. If we hand over 10,000 li of land and the people of the world to unknown people in the future, it's better to use Wang Ye's hands to resolve it now. Pang Shao let out a long sigh. Forget it, let me think about how to have a win-win solution. Seeing Pang Shao like this, Zhong Dazhang couldn't help but sigh. There are all kinds of evaluations of Wang Yi in the world. You are Dezhou's people's god of war. You swept away tyranny for them and opened up new territory for them. You are also the Dian's people's nightmare. Back then, when you led the troops to attack, every time there was a battle report, we would tremble in fear. Thinking about what happened back then, Qin Yining and Master Zhong both sighed with emotion and found it just as funny. That's right. Whenever we hear about which city you conquered, which place you decapitated in public, or which place you massacred, we were so scared that we almost cried. But now that I think about it, Wang Yi is a truly benevolent person. Although it is the duty of a soldier to lead troops to war, and there are casualties on the battlefield, you have never harmed the people. Now that you have been forced to this point by Jinshang, you still retain your benevolent heart. This is truly admirable. Head shopkeeper Zhong bowed sincerely. It is this old man's fortune to be able to follow your highness. Pang Xiao waved her hand and supported Master Zhong, saying, "Don't say that." Seeing that he had achieved his goal today, Qin Yining smiled and said, all right, we are all on the same side. There is no need to be so polite. I understand Master Zhong's thoughts. Since today's matter is out in the open, Master Zhong should just keep it in your heart. As the saying goes, before the troops and horses are mobilized, the provisions must be prepared first. We should also take stock of the profits from the fields, shops, and factories under my control and discuss how to operate them. Master Zhong was a smart person and immediately understood Qin Yining's intentions. If Pang Xiao had any decisions and wanted to take action, he would need to use money. If Pang Xiao told him first, he would be able to start preparing for it. However, the topic that the three of them were discussing today was, after all, treason and heresy. If it was spread out and people knew about it, it was hard to guarantee that Pang Xiao would not be criticized. His good reputation would also be ruined. Not to mention outsiders, if Pang Xiao's subordinates, the Southern Pacifying Army and the Tiger Army, misunderstood the prince and thought that he wanted to stir up trouble for his own selfish reasons, that would be the biggest fatal wound. Even if Qin Yining hadn't ordered him, he definitely wouldn't have said a word to anyone. Wang Fei and Wang Yi were willing to tell him everything before they returned to Jing. They trusted him so much. He could only repay them with loyalty. When Master Zhong bid farewell, he was the same as usual. His expression was not unusual, but if one looked closely, one could see that his eyes were brighter and more determined than usual. After Master Zhong walked away, Pang Xiao smiled and asked Qin Yining, "You told Master Zhong these words. Are you not afraid that he will spread it and ruin your plans?" Qin Yining smiled and shook his head. He won't. He has been careful and conscientious when he works with me for the sake of loyalty. Now, no matter if it is loyalty or the future of his family, he knows what he is doing. These kinds of words, if you say it out of the blue, people need to believe it. Slandering an official of the court is a great crime. Slandering a prince of a different surname is an additional crime. Pang Xiao said, "That's true. Right now, even if I tell my subordinates that I want to cause trouble, they probably won't believe that I am doing it for myself. Sir Xia and Sir Su are so close, they won't believe it either." Chapter 895. Pang Xiao smiled. There were no outsiders in the room, so he naturally touched Qin Yining's face. "All right. Now that we know where the treasure is, we have a goal. We can't let Jinshang get the money. If we can't get it, Qingtian Alliance can get it. If we can't get it ourselves, we'll give Qingtian Alliance a push." Wang Yi is so generous. Qin Yining pursed her lips. "I'm very stingy. I can't bear to give the treasure to anyone. Although Qingtian Alliance won't do anything big with the treasure, it's better that the treasure is in your hands." Pang Xiao was amused by her cute appearance and laughed again. He pulled Qin Yining around the table and sat on his muscular legs. The hairpin in Qin Yining's hair bun makes a light and crisp sound. "Wang Yi, we're in the front hall. You're being naughty again. What's there to be afraid of? No one will come without my permission. Besides, there are no elders in the house now. It's just the two of us. We can do whatever we want." Pang Xiao hugged her waist, which was so slender that it seemed as if he could wrap his arms around her waist with both hands. He kissed her ears and neck lightly, like a dragonfly skimming the water. Qin Yining shied away and laughed softly, but her mind was not idle. "Hey, Shishi. You said last time that your majesty will arrange for an imperial envoy to supervise the construction of the imperial mausoleum, and the local magistrate will cooperate. Yes, why? Qin Yining's big eyes turned and smiled. Actually, I think that if there's no other way, we can work on the imperial envoy who will supervise the construction of the imperial mausoleum. Ming Xiao burst into laughter when he heard this. You little girl, you're so crafty. Only me. Didn't you think of this? Alright, we're telepathic. We think of the same thing. That's right. So, if we are talking about cleverness, our Dai Fu is cleverer. Qin Yining twisted his body and patted Pang Zhao's face. Pang Zhao was amused by her and laughed. Huzi walked to the front of the courtyard and heard the laughter coming from inside. He couldn't help but laugh. He smiled and winked at Bing Tang, who was talking to Ji Yun in the courtyard. Hey, little Tang. When Ji Yun heard this, she covered her mouth and laughed. She gently closed the Bing Tang. Hurry up and go. I'm looking for you. Bing Tang blushed and rolled her eyes at Ji Yun. Then, she ran to Huzi. How many times have I told you not to call me little candy? Then how about I call you Mang Mang? Huzi chuckled and gestured towards the room with his chin. Wang Yi and Wang Fei are in. That's right. What do you want to do? Bing Tang glared at her defensively. Wang Ye's laughter was too happy. They heard it clearly from outside. I'm warning you. If you dare to make fun of Wang Fei, I'll let you have a taste of being pricked by needles. Huzi laughed loudly. What are you afraid of? Wang Yi has been in a bad mood these days. Ever since the old madam's incident, the whole family set off again. Wang Yi saw that Wang Fei was depressed and he was also listless. I haven't heard Wang Yi so happy in so many days. Now that he's finally happy, I can't be happier. That's right. Bing Tang had a bitter expression. Wang Fei is really pitiful. The whole family has only been reunited for a short while and now they are forced to separate again. The two young masters have been pestering Wang Fei all day. Suddenly, the two of them are not by her side. Not just Wang Fei, even us who are following them feel empty. It's as if something very important is suddenly missing. What's rare is that both Wang Yi and Wang Fei are in a good mood now. This is great news. Hey, I have a piece of good news to tell Wang Yi. What good news? Huzi made a face and ran towards the main room. I'm not telling you. Bing Tang stomped her foot. You rotten bastard. Huzi laughed out loud. She walked to the door and cleared her throat. She smiled and said, Wang Yi. Come in. Yes. Huzi waited for a while before lifting the warm curtains and entering the room. Pang Xiao and Qin Yining were sitting on the left and right sides of the main seats in the middle. They were both holding teacups and drinking tea. Wang Yi, we just received news that Imperial Envoy Lu Tingzhong is about to arrive at the old capital. It should be within the next 2 or 3 days. Pang Xiao calculated. We finished the negotiations in October. It's been 2 months since Lu Tingzhong arrived. That's not too fast. Qin Yining smiled and said, no matter what, it's good that he's here. Shouldn't we prepare to go back to the capital? If we don't leave now, I don't know what kind of decree your majesty will issue next time. It's time to prepare. Pang Xiao thought for a moment. Sister Yi should visit Boss Jiu often these days. She's taking care of her own child and there's no female elder around. Brother Yen should be 1 month old in a few days, right? Yes, I understand what you mean. I'll take care of Fei Shan and Brother Yen. Pang Xiao smiled and looked at Qin Yining. She nodded gently. Huzi stood on the side. She clearly felt that she was unnecessary. She quietly left. Peng Xiao and Qin Yining talked for a while. Then they went out and planned to go back to the military camp to make arrangements. Qin Yining called Bing Tang, Ji Yun, and Lian Xiaozhou. They took the prepared tonics, clothes, and a small hat and small clothes for Brother Yan and went to the Mu family. Brother Yan was still so cute. Lying in Qiu Feishan's arms, he looked at Qin Yining with a pair of big black eyes. He even knew how to smile and wave his little hands. Qiu Feishan took good care of herself during the confinement period. Her whole body was plump. Her long hair was tied up casually. She wore a black forehead band with red jade. Seeing that her son liked it so much, she couldn't help but smile. He knows who's beautiful and who's ugly at such a young age. When he saw two old nannies, he refused to let them hold him. He only allowed them when he saw a beautiful one. It turned out that the wet nurses hired by the family were only young and healthy, and had just given birth to a child. They didn't pay much attention to their appearance. But this kid was different. Among the wet nurses, there was one who looked slightly ordinary. Every time he saw her, he refused to drink her milk. When the old nannies made him laugh, he didn't respond with a straight face. You see how he laughs when you come. Qin Yining listened to it with interest. He sat on the edge of the bed and leaned over to look. As expected, Brother Yan stretched out his little hand to grab Qin Yining's ear happily, which made Qin Yining burst into laughter. Thinking of her own child, she felt a little sad. When Han and Zhao were so young, I also held them all day long. But later, I had no choice. The children were always not by my side. I was worried that they would not recognize me. Now, the children are gone. Sometimes I'm afraid that the next time I see them, they will grow up and forget the mother in their memory. I'm even afraid that I will never see them again. Qiu Feishan didn't have a deep understanding of this pain in the past. Now that she was a mother, she understood the pain of separation. Not to mention other things, if her son was taken away, the next time he saw her, he wouldn't even know that she was his mother. She worked so hard to give birth to him. Wouldn't all her efforts be in vain? Qiu Feishan patted Qin Yining's arm sympathetically. Don't worry. I think Xiao and Han are smarter than other children. And they have Master Qin's guidance. They can't be wrong. Your family members are all knowledgeable people. The female elders are gentle and sensible. Even if you don't mention it, they will often mention you. They won't let the children forget you. Qin Yining smiled. I hope so. But sometimes, I feel that it's better if they can forget me, in case something happens to me in the future. What nonsense are you talking about? Qiu Feishan patted Brother Yan. His Highness will protect you. And that blockhead of my family will also protect you and Wang Yi. No matter what, he won't watch you lose your lives. Qin Yining sighed. Young Master Mu has saved us many times. He is a person who values friendship. He is a good friend of Wang Yi, so he will definitely sacrifice himself for his friend. What's more, his Sherbo wants to assist Wang Yi. I am now tied to Wang Yi's interests. So, whether it is for personal reasons or for business, the safety of you and Wang Yi is already the responsibility of Blockhead. Qin Yining nodded and smiled. Why do you also call young Master Mu a blockhead? Aren't you afraid that he will be unhappy? Of course not. He is very happy that I call him that. He said that only close people call him that. Qiu Feishan smiled very gently. I have seen through him. He doesn't have any bad intentions. Recently, he told me that he wants to send me and my child back to Tianji Valley. He said that as the wife of the Tianji sect's leader, I can't be in danger. When I heard it, I really didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He cares about you. That's right. Perhaps it's because His Highness sent everyone away. He also got some inspiration. He is afraid that in the future, Brother Yen and I will be implicated. Then what do you think? Qin Yining looked at Brother Yen with a smile. Brother Yen had closed his eyes and was about to fall asleep. Qiu Feishan lowered her voice. She gently swayed her body and patted Brother Yen. She said, "Of course I can't go. He doesn't understand. My grandfather raised me for so long. Although he despises women, he gave me everything he could. He was killed by that bastard Qiu Yuanqing. If I shrink my neck and refuse to avenge him, then I don't deserve to be a member of the Qiu family." But I wanted to tease him, so I asked him what Tianji Valley is like. Are there many disciples in Tianji sect? Are there many people who will serve me and my child? Guess what he said? Qin Yining curiously asked, what did he say? He said that there are a total of 3 people in Tianji sect. He, his uncle, and a grandmaster who is wandering somewhere. Tianji sect is very big. The whole valley is theirs. There is a lot of land. They can plant as much as they want. There are no servants. I was shocked when I heard it. The dignified Tianji sect is like this. Chapter 896. Qin Yining laughed and said, "He wants to live a secluded life with you. Actually, that kind of life is also very good, far away from disputes, and you don't have to live in fear all day. It's good. But it must be after all the troubles have been solved, and there are no more worldly concerns. Otherwise, even if you live in seclusion, you won't have a good life, and you will have to worry about being found at any time." Qiu Feishan said to Qin Yining seriously, "This time, you and Wang Yi are preparing to return to the capital, so don't worry. Yesterday, that blockhead also said that this time, no matter what, he will protect the 2 of you." Qin Yining laughed and said, "I know, it's just that he has the heart, but what if his martial uncle causes trouble again?" I asked the same thing. Qiu Feishan's voice was very soft, but she seemed to be unable to hold back her laughter. At that time, if it wasn't for his martial uncle suddenly causing trouble, if he could protect you, you wouldn't have almost been in danger, and they wouldn't have been caught in the middle of the night. But can you guess what he said? What did he say? Qiu Feishan's face was stiff, and she imitated Mu Jinghu and said in a low voice, "Even if martial uncle doesn't agree, I'm not afraid. I see that she has been fed well by little fox, and she is very happy." Qin Yining heard this and laughed. He plans to continue to let Wang Yi lock up Tian Jizi. Yes. Qiu Feishan was both amused and carefree. Seeing her expression, Qin Yining understood and didn't say anything more. When Qiu Feishan married Mu Jinghu, it was because she was threatened by Tian Jizi. Now it seemed that Qiu Feishan and Mu Jinghu had real feelings for each other, but she still resented Tian Jizi in her heart. It was only because of Mu Jinghu's face, and also because of Tian Jizi's unpredictable means that Qiu Feishan couldn't do anything. Qin Yining whispered to Qiu Feishan about what she should pay attention to when taking care of the child. In the next few days, Qin Yining often came to visit the Mu family. Qiu Feishan was a smart person, and she was very happy to be close to Qin Yining. Back then, Qiu Feishan almost sold Pang Shao for Mu Jinghu. The 8th day of the 12th lunar month was the day to eat porridge. Qin Yining was ordering people to deliver laba congee to the Mu family and then to Pang Shao when Huzi walked in quickly and replied, "Your Highness, Lord Lu has arrived. Magistrate Qi has already gone to welcome him. Our people have received the news that Lord Lu is accompanied by Magistrate Qi to the Yamen. Later, he will go to the South Pacifying Army's camp to inspect." Pang Shao smiled and nodded. He called for Huzi to come over. "Come. Let's eat first. Then we'll set off." Huzi was originally a little anxious. After all, Peng Shao was ordered to lead the South Pacifying Army to guard the South. If the imperial envoy came and Peng Shao was not in the army camp, it would be bad for his reputation. Peng Shao could see what Huzi was worried about. He smiled and said, "It's okay. Hurry up and eat. Lu Tingzhong will not go to the army camp so quickly." He first followed Magistrate Qi to the yamen for an inspection. "This is to give me time to prepare." Huzi suddenly understood. He slapped his forehead. "Tsk. I forgot." Huzi did not stand on ceremony. He took the bowl of porridge Qin Yining gave him with both hands. Together with Peng Shao, he drank 7 bowls of porridge in one breath. Qin Yining did not finish half a bowl of porridge. Peng Shao and Huzi ate a bowl of porridge together. After they finished eating, they wiped their mouths and walked out while discussing. Qin Yining looked at the two people's bellies. They did not look bloated at all. He could not help but sigh with emotion. These people who were born in the tiger army ate like wolves and tigers. Qin Yining was still worried about Peng Shao. Now that she had nothing to do at home, she discussed business matters with Master Zhong. During this time, she did not forget to ask Bing Tang to arrange for Jing Huwei, whom Peng Shao had left for her, to scout. This time, Qin Yining's silver-masked spy was taken away by Chao Yuqing. Xie was a strange place, and they were such a big family. Although Peng Shao had arranged for Jing Huwei and other guards to protect them, and they also had people to help them in Xie, Chao Yuqing was the one who would do her best to protect Qin Huaiyuan. Chao Yuqing was the leader of the silver-masked spy. It was convenient for her to do things with more subordinates. It was also convenient for Qin Huaiyuan to find a way to take root in Xie. Therefore, the people around Qin Yining now were the people that Peng Shao had left for her. In the afternoon, Jing Huwei, who had gone to scout, came back. "Princess, Wang Yi, Lord Lu, and Magistrate Qi have all gone to the yamen to talk." Qin Yining asked worriedly, "Did everything go well with them? Did anything go wrong?" "No. It seems that Wang Yi and Lord Lu had a quarrel in the barracks, but they reconciled in the end." "What about Magistrate Qi's attitude?" "Magistrate Qi didn't do anything strange." Qin Yining nodded slightly and asked people to rest. Therefore, Magistrate Qi was still the same as before. He didn't express his attitude, didn't take sides, and would never help either side. The newcomer, Lu Tingzhong, was Peng Shao's man. Qin Yining knew that Peng Shao had a sense of propriety, so she was not worried about this. What she was worried about was whether there would be other people's spies among the people who came with them this time. With Li Qitian's meticulousness, even if he trusted Lu Tingzhong, he wouldn't just let him come alone. He must have arranged for other people. Qin Yining was worried and waited until Peng Shao came back in the middle of the night. Qin Yining went down to take off the cloak for him. She asked, "Why did you quarrel with Lord Lu?" Peng Shao wasn't surprised that Qin Yining knew about this at all. He smiled and said, "If I met Lord Lu and got along so well that it was as if we were wearing a pair of pants, wouldn't your majesty be angry?" Qin Yining was stunned and then suddenly laughed. "You're right. It's my fault for worrying too much. It's my fault." Peng Shao put his big hands around Qin Yining's waist. When he leaned closer, there was a faint smell of wine in his mouth. He pecked the corner of her lips, gently and softly. He said in a muffled voice, "If you don't worry about me, I'll be angry." Qin Yining's soft lips were tickled by Peng Shao's slightly dry lips. She smiled and put her arms around Peng Shao's neck. "Why are you angry? Even if I don't worry about you, you'll be fine." Peng Shao let out a low and deep chuckle. His laughter was full of arrogance. "My sister Yi is so sweet." As he said this, he kissed her deeply. Early the next morning, Qin Yining asked Pang Shao while he was eating breakfast, "Your Majesty arranged for the imperial envoy to monitor you?" Pang Shao ate in big mouthfuls. When he heard this, he swallowed the food in his mouth and said, "Your Majesty means that if I continue to defy the imperial edict, the imperial envoy has the power to arrest me and directly escort me back to the capital. If I'm willing to comply, the imperial envoy will continue to stay here and eliminate my influence here." Qin Yining expected that Li Qitian arranged for the imperial envoy to come for this. He nodded and didn't say anything else. Pang Shao picked up a piece of fish and carefully removed the bones before putting it in Qin Yining's bowl. He asked, "Lu Tingzhong also asked about our family." "What did he ask?" Qin Yining ate a mouthful of fish. Pang Shao saw that Qin Yining liked the fish, so he continued to pick out the bones for her. He said carelessly, "Yesterday, Magistrate Qi told Lu Tingzhong that he often saw people coming and going from the family Qin. Lu Tingzhong pretended to ask me, but I said there was no one in the family. I'm afraid that Magistrate Qi's servants either saw wrongly or saw a ghost. Our families were killed when we were transporting the coffins back to our hometown. Now, only you are still alive." Qin Yining smiled. What did they say? What else could they say? When I answered like this, Lu Tingzhong was so scared that his face turned pale. He even ordered people to burn paper and incense and asked people to help the souls of the dead. When Magistrate Qi saw Lu Tingzhong's attitude, he didn't say anything more. Qin Yining nodded with a smile. She ate the fish that Pang Shao picked out for her and said, "If you say this to your Majesty, will your Majesty believe it? Before I sent my father away, I thought that your Majesty would believe me. After all, the mountain is high and the Emperor is far away. That day, I did leave your Majesty's men to follow up. The ground was covered with the corpses of the bandits, so it's fine to blame it on the bandits along the way. But now, perhaps I have a guilty conscience, I feel that your Majesty won't believe me. Whether he believes it or not, he won't be able to find anyone in our family. He can only believe me. Moreover, he deliberately made things difficult for us. After my father-in-law died, he didn't say anything. He was still angry about the money and provisions he lost. Now, he said that the people in the family Qin and the master of our mansion were killed by bandits on the way back. It's not easy for him to stop everyone's mouths. How can he have the time to ask us?" Qin Yining smiled. In fact, Li Qitian might really be able to ask. However, just as Pang Shao said, Li Qitian would definitely not be able to find her. She insisted that she was no longer around. Even if Li Qitian was beaten to death, he would never think that she had gone to the oasis in the desert. Thinking of this, Qin Yining put down the bowl and chopsticks hesitantly. "Actually, I'm a little worried." "Worried about what?" Qin Yining hesitated and said, "Mrs. Liao and I were not the only ones who were kidnapped by Wudajin Khan. There was also Second Master Lu. Lu Heng seems to be loyal to your Majesty now. Is it possible that he will mention Siye?" Pang Shao gently scratched the tip of Qin Yining's nose and said with a smile, "Don't worry. Even if he wants to, he won't be able to find Siye. What's more, your Majesty's energy is now with me. How can he have the mind to care about other things?" Qin Yining nodded hesitantly. At that time, Mr. Liao had planted a tracking goo on Lu Heng, but Mr. Liao said that although the tracking goo's sensing distance is very far, it can only survive for 3 years. Now, 3 years have passed since that day in Siye. If he wants to use the tracking goo to do something, it won't be easy. Pang Shao nodded with a smile, "You don't have to worry. Father-in-law has already discussed with me. Since father-in-law can propose to move the whole family to Siye, these things must have been considered properly. Hall Master Liao is loyal to you, and he won't tell anyone about Siye. You can rest assured." Qin Yining's heart relaxed a little. He thought about it and smiled, that's true. And even if your majesty knows about Xia, so what? He can't find her anyway. That's right. Pang Shao also smiled. After the two of them finished their meal, they began to discuss the matter of their departure. Qin Yining told Pang Shao what Qiu Feishan told him. Chapter 897. That's right. Qin Yining found it funny and said, how popular is Tian Jizi? Even someone as good-tempered as Mr. Mu has offended him unknowingly. Pang Shao also felt that it was very interesting. I think it doesn't matter whether she is locked up or not. If she wants to leave, there are many ways to get out. When the time comes, she can still stir up trouble. Moreover, when we go back, we will take away all the trustworthy people. We don't have so many extra people to watch over her. Qin Yining also thought so. He smiled and said, actually, I think Tian Jizi won't cause trouble anymore. Letting Mr. Mu protect you is what she wants to see. She didn't care at first because Tian Jizi wanted her dead. Now that Pang Shao was forced to gradually walk on the right path, Tian Jizi was relieved of a huge burden. She probably wouldn't be as calculative as before. Pang Shao naturally understood what Qin Yining meant. He sighed and touched Qin Yining's head with his big hand. Let's prepare these days. Let's try to set off as soon as possible. Okay. Actually, I have something else to tell you. Pang Shao saw Qin Yining's serious expression and asked curiously, what is it? Tell me. Qin Yining hesitated. In the end, he called Lian Xiaozhou over and instructed Bing Tang and Ji Yun, you guys guard outside. Don't let anyone come close. Pang Shao saw Qin Yining being so serious and immediately sat up straight. Bing Tang and Ji Yun saw this scene and were really worried. They were afraid that Lian Xiaozhou had caused some trouble. Bing Tang also had some premonitions. Although she didn't know exactly what happened to Lian Xiaozhou, she had been with Lian Xiaozhou for so long. She was especially concerned about Lian Xiaozhou, so she could always find some clues. However, their master knew what to do. It was not their turn to speak. Ji Yun and Bing Tang went out to keep watch. Qin Yining pulled Lian Xiaozhou closer. 4 years had passed, and Lian Xiaozhou was no longer malnourished. She was already a 13-year-old girl. She had grown into a slender and elegant girl. She wore a light pink cotton jacket, and her hair was combed into 2 braids. She wore pink and white beaded flowers. She was delicate and beautiful like a peach blossom blooming in spring. Lian Xiaozhou had been by Qin Yining's side for so many years, so she was fluent in her speech. When she saw Pang Zhao's serious expression, she tugged at Qin Yining's sleeve nervously. Sister, back then, when she had just arrived, she had dared to challenge this uncle in front of her, but as time passed, she had become afraid. Qin Yining said, I'm sorry, Shi. I've been hiding something from you. Pang Shao looked at Lian Xiaozhou in bewilderment. Qin Yining also looked at Lian Xiaozhou. He held her hand and whispered to Pang Shao, when Dian was destroyed, my father brought our family to Dezhou's capital. When we passed by the border of Liang City, our group was intercepted by Ji Lan's men. In order to escape, I was forced to escape deep into the mountains. That's where I met Shao Kanji. Yes, you told me that you almost froze to death in the mountains that day. It was Shao Kanji who saved you. Her father passed away, and a 10-year-old child like her could not survive in the mountains. You brought her down and raised her like a younger sister. Qin Yining nodded. Yes, that's what I told you and my father at that time. But in fact, I lied to you about this. Lian Xiaozhou's surname is actually not Lian. Her name should be reversed. Her surname is Zhou, and her name is Xiaolian. She's not 14 years old this year, but 13 years old. Pang Xiao was stunned. Zhou Xiaolian, her surname is Zhou. Yes. Her father's name is Wei Xian, and her title is Yongfu. Pang Xiao was shocked. You mean, she's actually Princess Yongfu of Beiji? Yes. Qin Yining nodded. Pang Xiao found it hard to believe. What's going on? Why didn't you tell me? Qin Yining hugged Lian Xiaozhou and patted her slightly trembling hand to comfort her. He said softly, before Beiji was destroyed, the last emperor saw that the situation was not good. The emperor only cherished the young Princess Yongfu, so he sent a letter to General Lu Jinxian, asking him to take the princess away. General Lu took the 5-year-old Princess Yongfu out of the capital and lived in seclusion in the mountains. But they were always hunted down. General Lu sacrificed himself not long after to lead the pursuers away. Princess Yongfu was only 5 years old. She lived alone in the mountains. God knows how hard it was for her to survive. She lived alone until she was 9 years old, until she met me. Because she was young when she left the palace, her memory was blurred. She hadn't seen anyone for more than 4 years. When I met her, she didn't even know how to speak. She was like a little savage. Qin Yining hugged Lian Xiaozhou with a sad face. When I saw her, I thought of myself. I knew that the incapable emperor of Beiji had done a lot of evil, and his dynasty was destroyed. But Princess Yongfu was so young. She didn't do anything evil. She was even implicated by her father and suffered so much at such a young age. At that time, I thought that your father, General Lu, died because of the incapable emperor of Beiji, and Beiji was destroyed by you. You have a feud with little Kanji. Even though she was still a child, I was afraid that you would. You were afraid that I would kill her, so you kept it from me. Pang Zhao's voice was gentle. Qin Yining nodded. Little Kanji has been with me all these years. I have been teaching her about this country and the current world. She gradually grew up, learned to read and write, and learned pharmacology and medicine from Bing Tang. She also knew how to distinguish right from wrong. So even though the blood of the Zhou family flows in her body, she is really different from the incapable emperor of Beiji. Pang Xiao nodded and didn't say anything. She asked again, then why are you telling me now? Why do you mention the hatred of my father in front of me? Aren't you afraid that I will kill her because of my fear of her? Because you are my husband. We have lived together for so many years, and I know you well. Speaking of the hatred of my father, didn't my father sow discord between Pang Zhongzhi and the incapable emperor of Beiji? It was precisely because of this scheme that the incapable ruler of the northern Ji state seized the opportunity to deal with the Pang family. But now, you are very good to me, and you have never hated my father. You know very well what is right and what is wrong. In fact, I was too concerned and didn't tell you. When I was young, you came to see me. At that time, you were 15 or 16 years old, and you could already distinguish right from wrong. You knew that I was innocent. Now that you are almost 40 years old, you can naturally tell whether little Kanji is innocent or not. Pang Xiao smiled. But she is Princess Yongfu. I can tell whether she is innocent or not. Doesn't she hate me for destroying Beiji? Lian Xiaozhou met Pang Xiao's sharp eyes. She first shrank her neck subconsciously, but she immediately straightened her body and stubbornly blocked Qin Yining's gaze. Don't talk about sister like that. Sister is a good person. I learned how to be a good person when I followed sister. I know that many things my father did were wrong. Sister taught me the truth that the peak of prosperity is bound to decline. She also taught me the change of dynasties in history. The Zhou destroyed Beiji because my father wasted the people and money and killed the loyal people. Beiji's fate was exhausted, so it was destroyed. You were the one who led the soldiers to fight, but you did it for the people to live a good life. You are not a bad person. My father was very good to me, but he was too bad to the people in the world. Although I remember that you were the one who destroyed Beiji, I have never regarded you as an enemy. It is not only because I understand the truth and you did nothing wrong, but also because you are my sister's husband. My sister likes you very much, so you are definitely not a bad person. Sister hid it from you to protect me. She has been teaching me the truth. I will not harm you, so you are not allowed to be so fierce to sister. Even little Porridge's voice was clear and bright. It was as if she had poured out a whole cart of walnuts and said everything that was on her mind. Pang Shao did not know whether to laugh or cry. Was he an unreasonable person in the eyes of this little girl? However, when she said, "Sister likes you, so you are definitely not a bad person," he was really happy. However, Pang Shao wanted to tease Qin Yining, so he deliberately smiled and did not speak. Sometimes, a smile was more intimidating than words. When a person spoke, one could judge the person's mood from the tone and content. However, when a person did not say a word, the consequences of letting their imagination run wild would be terrifying. Lian Xiaozhou's hair stood on end. She bit her lower lip with her teeth and was so nervous that her whole body was tense. Qin Yining was not an ordinary person. She knew Pang Shao too well. When Pang Zhao's expression changed, she knew that he did not take it to heart. She could not help but feel relieved. At the same time, she was moved by Pang Zhao's open-mindedness. Seeing that this person was still in the mood to tease others, she pulled Lian Xiaozhou's hand and made her stand in front of her. She rolled her eyes at Pang Shao and comforted, "Ignore him. Your brother-in-law is like that. He is not serious at all. He is not angry." Lian Xiaozhou looked back at Pang Zhao's fierce face. She was very suspicious of Qin Yining's judgment. "Big sister, how about you send me away so that I won't be suspected by others?" Pang Shao was so angry that he laughed. "Suspect what?" Lian Xiaozhou said, "Of course you suspect that I have the intention to avenge Imperial Father." Pang Shao pointed at his heart. "I will sit here and let you take your revenge. See if you can kill me." Lian Xiaozhou was so scared that her face turned pale. However, she stubbornly said, "I said it clearly just now. Why can't you understand what I am saying? I don't want revenge. The change of history is the general trend. Sister taught me so much so that I can live a good life. If I kill you now, will I be able to live a good life? You say it as if you can kill me." Pang Shao laughed. "You bad person, bad uncle." Lian Xiaozhou glared angrily. Qin Yining saw that the two of them had changed the topic. He shook his head in amusement. His initial nervousness was also dissipated by this commotion. When Pang Shao was called an uncle, he remembered that he was almost 20 years old. Qin Yining had just turned 20 years old. In addition, he was a little rough on the battlefield. He looked much older than Qin Yining. Compared to Lian Xiaozhou, he looked more like an uncle. He could not help but snort and did not want to talk to her anymore. Chapter 898. Upon hearing this, Pang Shao said understandingly, "So many years have passed. Little Kanji should pay her respects to General Liu, who protected her. We rarely have the chance to go out, so it's a good time to pay her respects on the way back to the capital." Qin Yining raised his eyebrows. "That's the general of Beiji. Even if he's the general of Beiji, he's still a loyal person. Such a person deserves respect." Qin Yining smiled. In fact, Pang Shao was willing to go through the trouble of collecting the bodies of her maternal grandfather's men when De Zhou and Dian were at war. He respected this type of loyal and patriotic person. Lian Xiaozhou couldn't help but sneak a glance at Pang Xiao. She pursed her lips and smiled. Paying respects to General Liu is one thing, but there's another important matter. Qin Yining leaned close to Pang Xiao and whispered a few words in her ear. Pang Xiao suddenly sat up straight. Her phoenix eyes widened as she looked at Qin Yining in shock. Are you serious? Of course I'm serious. However, only little Kanji and I can find this place. Normal people won't be able to find it in a short time after entering the mountain. Pang Xiao looked at Qin Yining and little Kanji with a complicated expression. You guys are really amazing. My lord has been looking for this item ever since he left the throne. Someone said that the Beiji Imperial Jade Seal had disappeared a long time ago. It was later confirmed that this was indeed the case. Previously, my lord was still scolding the Beiji Emperor for losing the Imperial Jade Seal. Could it be that he used radishes to carve seals to handle court affairs? I didn't expect that this item would be with you. Pang Xiao looked at Lian Xiaozhou. Lian Xiaozhou said, I don't understand either. I don't remember the things in the palace, so I don't have any idea about the Imperial Jade Seal. Later, my sister took me away from there and hid this item. Pang Xiao nodded. If that's the case, we really have to make a trip to the mountain. However, we have to plan who we'll bring along. Qin Yining held Lian Xiaozhou's hand and said with a smile, I'll leave it to you. Pang Xiao thought for a moment, then stood up and said, Now the Imperial Envoy has arrived. Everything that needs to be done has been done. I will go and make some arrangements. Let's set off as soon as possible. If this drags on, Your Majesty might not just issue an edict next time. He might even arrange for someone to capture him. After Pang Xiao went out, Qin Yining held Lian Xiaozhou's hand and said, Don't worry. Wang Yi is not an unreasonable person. He won't hurt you. I've always known. Lian Xiaozhou looked at Qin Yining with trust in her eyes. Since sister arranged to tell Wang Yi about this, she must be certain that I'm safe. Good girl. Qin Yining patted Lian Xiaozhou's head and said with a smile, Go tell your sister Bing Tang and sister Ji Yun that we should pack up and prepare to return to the capital. Yes. Lian Xiaozhou ran out happily. Qin Yining rubbed the space between his eyebrows. He didn't know what the situation in the capital was like, but he was certain that it definitely wouldn't be as comfortable as it was here. Now that he was under Li Qitian's nose, he couldn't help but be tense. However, after a short period of exhaustion, Qin Yining's fighting spirit was ignited again. In order to reunite with her family as soon as possible, in order for her 2 children to be able to live freely in this world in the future, without having to hide from place to place, she was willing to do anything. Although Xia was good, it was, after all, a place to hide from the world. She couldn't let her family live there cautiously forever, right? With the Imperial Envoy present, Magistrate Qi was more active than usual. Several times when Lu Ting went back and forth between the military camp and the Yamen, Magistrate Qi followed by his side. Perhaps because the Imperial Envoy was present, Magistrate Qi had a backbone and was no longer afraid of the slightest thing. When the news that Pang Xiao had been transferred back to the capital and that the commander of the South Pacifying Army would select a suitable candidate to be sent out spread, the entire South Pacifying Army camp was in an uproar. In the beginning, the soldiers who were not convinced by Pang Xiao and made trouble for Pang Xiao were all discussing in private when they heard that Pang Xiao had been transferred for no reason. There were even some straightforward men who formed a group to ask the Imperial Envoy. The court didn't give out grain and told the local people to raise their own salaries. Brothers, you've never seen the Yamen give out money, but Wang Yi came and never shorted the brothers' rations and salaries. That's right, Wang Yi even led the brothers to suppress bandits. In the past, the people of the old Dian capital saw us as enemies, but now they see us as benefactors. Now, I am someone who can walk with my back straight in front of the people. Such a good commander, you can't just change him with a few words. The soldiers had rough temperaments and loud voices. They shook Magistrate Qi and Lu Ting's heads until they were buzzing. After these people expressed their views, Lu Ting said, "Your Majesty arranged for Wang Yi to return to the capital, so you must also want to commend Wang Yi for his achievements here. I already know everyone's thoughts and will definitely be heard by the heavens. Everyone, don't worry." Magistrate Qi also nodded repeatedly, indicating that Pang Zhao's transfer was ordered by Your Majesty. Hearing that it was an imperial edict, the people present had no objections. Everyone discussed and left. Pang Zhao stood not far away with Huzi with his hands behind his back and saw everything. Huzi curled his lips and whispered with righteous indignation, "How can these idiots be so gullible? If it were me, I definitely wouldn't believe it. Even if Your Majesty is satisfied with your work, he can just swagger and reward you. Who doesn't rub powder on their face and rub it in their pants? You've been transferred back to the capital without any promotion or reward. It looks like you're going to be escorted to the capital for trial." Pang Zhao didn't refute Huzi's words, but he also didn't continue. He only said, "Tell our brothers to get ready. Mr. Xie, Mr. Su, and the others also pack up at the fastest speed. We'll set off tomorrow." "Yes." Huzi nodded and then asked, "Wang Yi, we still have 2 people locked up here." "Who were the 2 people locked up?" "Of course, it was Yuan Yujiang Yuan, the shopkeeper arranged by Tian Jizi and Lu family to check the accounts in Guangdong." Pang Zhao smiled and said, "It doesn't matter. With Tian Jizi's ability, she can leave whenever she wants. I'll let Tian Jizi out now." "When did I say I'll let her go?" Pang Zhao raised his eyebrows. Huzi was surprised and said, "Didn't you just say that she can leave whenever she wants?" Pang Zhao curved his lips and said, "She's so powerful. She can leave with her own ability. Why does she need this king to let her go? In this case, will Mr. Mu? No, he won't. He said it himself. We have good food and drink here. He wants his uncle to calm down so that he won't let his imagination run wild when he comes out." Huzi was speechless when he heard this. Then he asked, "What about shopkeeper Yuan? He's coveting your Wang Fei and wants to swagger out. Let him eat his prison food and think about where he went wrong." Huzi nodded and couldn't help but sigh. With Wang Ye's jealousy, it was already merciful that he didn't take Yuan Yujiang's life. Chapter 899. Mu Jinghu finally understood why Pang Zhao was so concerned about Qin Yining. Previously, he had secretly lamented that love was long, but now, he was living the life of a warm bed with his wife and children. If he did not know what he had to do, it would be difficult for him to leave home. "Have you decided to set off tomorrow?" "Yes, I don't plan to bring too many people back this time. I will probably only bring my trusted aides. Jinghu Wei, I only plan to bring 50 people." Mu Jinghu frowned in disapproval. "Why not bring more people? You know that you will encounter trouble when you return. That person is not a benevolent person. When he sees that you have too few people, he may secretly order someone to assassinate you." Pang Zhao sighed. "How would I not know this? It's just that the number of guards in the prince's residence is limited. Moreover, I am now at the cusp of the storm. There are many people in the court who hate me, and even more officials who are watching me. No one knows when someone will appear to censor me. Since I have already made plans to return to the capital, it is naturally better to avoid unnecessary trouble. As for an assassination, I am not afraid. I will just bring more elites. I don't believe that he will really dare to kill me with great fanfare. I don't want his feathers anymore." Mu Jinghu thought about Pang Zhao's sullen days and could not help but shake his head and sigh. You have already given in enough. If you give in again, your family's lives will be lost. If it were me, I would not be as kind as you. However, you have always thought more thoroughly than me. Mu Jinghu suggested seriously, you should also make a good plan. You can't go back to living your life like before. Let's not talk about anything else. Just talk about your wife. How many times has she escaped death? What if she is not so lucky the next time something happens? I did not understand you in the past, but now I understand. If anyone dares to touch my wife and children, it will be like stabbing a knife into my heart. I do not dare to imagine those days. I know. Pang Zhao nodded emotionally and patted Mu Jinghu's arm. Thank you. Is there a need to be so courteous between us? Shanshan and I have already discussed this. When you enter the capital this time, I must accompany you. Don't worry. If there's any danger, I'll definitely be able to protect you and the Qin clan. But I'm afraid I won't be able to protect everyone. There are many crouching tigers and hidden dragons in the capital. Your Majesty has many experts by his side, so it's not easy for you to achieve this. What's more, in my current situation, not only did you not break off the cleansing agent with me, you even dared to escort us back. This is enough to show your loyalty. Blockhead, I don't even know how to thank you. If we're brothers, then there's no need to say such things. When Martial Uncle and I were captured by the Chiu family, didn't you do your best for me? Not only that, he was almost betrayed by Chiu Feishan. Mu Jinghu's skin was thin, and he felt a little uncomfortable when he thought of this. Pang Zhao did not continue to be courteous with him, and changed the topic. If you go with me, the family will be completely dependent on Boss Chiu's support. She has to be busy with business matters, busy with guarding against the Chiu family, and also looking after Yen. I originally wanted to let your martial uncle out to help her. After all, with your martial uncle's ability, if he wanted to come out, he could think of any way to come out. But I'm worried that Boss Chiu and Yen will be fine. After thinking about it, I still think it's better to let your martial uncle live alone for the time being. Pang Zhao did not know about the Lian Xiaozhou and the Imperial Jade Seal before, so naturally it was another plan. Now that he knew this big secret, it involved a lot of people, so he had to be more careful. Tian Jizi's ability to stir up trouble was too strong, and the way he did things was often unexpected. Pang Zhao was not only worried about his family, but also that Chiu Feishan and the child would be at a disadvantage. In order to help him, Mu Jinghu could not stay at home to look after his wife and child. If anything happened to Chiu Feishan and Yen how could Pang Zhao face Mu Jinghu in this life? Obviously, Mu Jinghu also thought of this. Anyway, my martial uncle has nothing to do all day long. You're feeding her with good food and drinks, so I don't have to worry about her. When I go out, I don't have to worry about her going out to cause trouble, or being captured by someone. It's good to let her stay at your place. Pang Zhao nodded and did not say much. After discussing for a while, they agreed to leave early the next morning. Pang Zhao got up and said goodbye. I'm going back to prepare. You should go and accompany the child too. The next time you see Yen, he's going to be a little older. Mu Jinghu smiled. That's good. He's too young and soft now, I don't even dare to touch him. When he's older, I can teach him martial arts. The child you teach must be good. Pang Zhao thought of his two children. The next time they meet, he did not know if the children would still recognize him as their father. Suppressing the emotions in his heart, the two of them said goodbye to each other. When they returned home, Qin Yining had already arranged everything in the mansion, and their luggage was also ready. Qin Yining helped Pang Zhao wash her hair while telling her what they brought this time, and what arrangements they made for many things. Sister Yi, you're so nice. I don't have to worry about anything. You've already arranged everything so neatly. Pang Xiao listened to Qin Yining's words. She wiped her hair with a cloth towel and hugged Qin Yining bare-chested. His upper body was muscular and well-proportioned. His honey-colored skin was covered with large and small scars, which glowed softly under the orange light. Qin Yining blushed and let him hold her waist. She stood on her tiptoes and stretched her arms to wipe him dry. Stop fooling around. It's cloudy tonight and the wind is strong. I don't think the weather tomorrow will be good. Let's rest early so that we can be more energetic on the road tomorrow. Are you afraid that I don't have enough energy? Pang Xiao hugged her a little tighter. The two of them were close together. Qin Yining's face was red and she quickly pushed him away. Stop fooling around. You're always fooling around. Pang Xiao was in a good mood. He hugged Qin Yining and slept soundly. However, just as Qin Yining said, the weather on the 10th day of the 12th lunar month in the 7th year of Xingqiang was not good. The group set off at dawn. The sky was still dark and the wind blew the snowflakes with a whistling sound. Qin Yining only opened the warm curtains a little and shrunk her neck because of the cold. Pang Xiao, Mu Jinghu, and Huzi were outside with Jinghu Wei and the others. Qin Yining opened the carriage window a little. Pang Xiao heard the noise and immediately turned his horse around. He approached the carriage and asked with a smile, "What's wrong? What do you want?" Qin Yining looked at the dark sky. The wind was blowing so hard that the white fox fur on her collar was sticking to her face. In this kind of weather, it's better not to ride a horse outside. We have enough carriages. Let everyone get on the carriages. We just need to take turns to drive the carriages. Huzi, Mu Jinghu, and the other Jinghu Wei all laughed. This little bit of wind and snow is nothing. We're still in the south. When we return to the north, the knife-like snow can cut our faces. Our brothers can still hide in the snow for a day and a night. Pang Xiao laughed heartily. He adjusted Qin Yining's collar and urged her, "Your body is weak and can't stand the cold. Quickly go back. Tell Ji Yun and Bing Tang not to save on charcoal." Qin Yining helplessly sat back in the carriage. She closed the window and lowered the warm curtains. She hugged the hand warmer for a long time before her cold hands warmed up slightly. "I'm most worried about the winter in the capital. We're now traveling in the 12th lunar month. It'll probably be spring by the time we reach the capital." Ji Yun saw Qin Yining shrunk her neck and buried half her face in her collar like a small animal that was afraid of the cold. She couldn't help but tease her, "It'll be even colder in late spring. In February, it'll be freezing but not the earth." Qin Yining wrinkled her nose. They weren't returning to the capital and there wasn't such weather. They had just set off and they were already caught up with dark clouds, strong winds, and sudden snow. Could it be that the heavens were warning them of the difficulties ahead? With Pang Xiao and Jinghu Wei around, the journey was very smooth. After arriving at Liang City, Pang Xiao asked Ji Yun, Bing Tang, Xiaoyu, and Su Weiji to follow Jinghu Wei to stay in the city to replenish their supplies. He called Qin Yining and Lian Xiaozhou alone and brought only Huzi and Mu Jinghu with him. The group of 5 entered the mountains. The mountains were covered in snow. If one wasn't familiar with the mountains, they would probably get lost as soon as they entered. Fortunately, Qin Yining and Lian Xiaozhou had rich experience living in the mountains and had a strong sense of direction. The two of them led the way while Pang Xiao and the other 2 dragged them on foot. After spending half a day, they arrived at an open space in the evening. In the blink of an eye, many years had passed. The burned area that was left as a mark was already covered in snow and ice. The trees in the small forest that had been burned by the fire were all over the place. There was still snow hanging on the withered branches. Qin Yining and Lian Xiaozhou held hands and walked around the open space, carefully looking at the surroundings. Lian Xiaozhou said, "It's here." Qin Yining nodded and turned around to where the house was. "This used to be a wooden house." Pang Xiao nodded and took out the shovel that he brought up the mountain and gave it to Huzi and Mu Jinghu. "Come, let's start." Huzi took the shovel and stamped his feet in confusion. "Wang Yi, the ground is frozen solid. I don't think the shovel will be able to dig a hole." "Go ahead and dig, there are treasures inside." Pang Xiao had already taken off his cloak and handed it to Qin Yining. He swung his arms and started digging. When Huzi and Mu Jinghu heard that there were treasures, they did not ask any more questions and only focused on digging. However, just as Huzi said, the ground in the mountains was already frozen solid. If not for the fact that the three of them were not ordinary people, they would not have been able to stand it after a few digging. Qin Yining said, "You don't have to dig too deep. When we first buried it, it was only a foot deep. You guys can just dig around this area." Qin Yining stomped a circle in the snow. The three of them dug according to the position that Qin Yining had pointed out. When it was deep into the night and the sounds of the wild beasts in the mountains rose and fell, Mu Jinghu's shovel seemed to have hit something hard. "What is this?" He squatted down to check it out. Pang Xiao and Huzi also ran over, wiping their sweat. Qin Yining and Lian Xiaozhou were almost frozen solid. When they heard the noise, they also moved closer and brought their torches closer to take a look. The three men carefully dug away the soil near the hard object. Soon, a jade seal the size of a man's fist was revealed. There was a lifelike coiling dragon carved on the seal. Chapter 900. Pang Xiao lifted the seal and patted away the dirt on it. The wind in the mountains caused the torches to flicker, but the words, "Treasure of Northern Ji," could still be seen clearly. Huzi and Mu Jinghu were dumbfounded. "This is the Imperial Jade Seal of Northern Ji. How did this appear here?" Mu Jinghu and Huzi turned to look at Qin Yining at the same time. Qin Yining had marked out this piece of land and she even knew the depth of the excavation. It was obvious that the Imperial Jade Seal that Li Qitian could not find was indeed hidden by Qin Yining. Huzi lowered his voice and could not hide his excitement as he said, "I did not expect the princess consort to hide such a treasure." Pang Xiao smiled and said, "You can't say such things carelessly. Just treat it as if this item has a mind of its own and ran here on its own." Qin Yining burst out laughing. Lian Xiaozhou also smiled until her eyes turned into crescents. The slightly tense atmosphere immediately eased. Huzi also suddenly realized that his words were inappropriate. He smiled apologetically and scratched the back of his head. Pang Xiao turned around and handed the Imperial Jade Seal to Qin Yining. "Take it," she said, "let's restore this place to its original state." "Okay." Huzi and Mu Jinghu did not have any objections. Very quickly, they began to work in full swing. Qin Yining held the heavy Imperial Jade Seal and showed it to Lian Xiaozhou. Lian Xiaozhou's slender and white fingertips gently stroked the muddy words, "Treasure of Northern Ji." Her eyes were already wet. It was impossible to say that she did not feel a bit of disappointment about the past. But she was no longer an insensible child. She understood what she could and could not do now. Moreover, in order to protect her, Qin Yining had hidden the truth from his most beloved for so many years. No matter how difficult her life had been, he had never mistreated her. Even if he wanted to take out the Imperial Jade Seal now, he had considered everything for her before telling her about it. If it was someone else with bad intentions, they would have deliberately left her behind or even killed her. Wouldn't she have to bear with it? Qin Yining was kind and did his best for her. He treated her like a younger sister. She could not be conflicted over the past that she could not remember clearly. It was not worth it to use the past to hurt the people closest to her. Northern G's fate was already over. It was already in the past. Pang Xiao and the other two restored the place to its original state. They also brought some snow to cover the ground. Fortunately, the snow has been heavy recently. It won't be long before these traces and our footprints are covered, Pang Xiao said with a smile. Qin Yining nodded and handed the imperial jade seal to Pang Xiao for safekeeping. I don't think anyone will come here in the wilderness. Let's think about how to spend the night. It's not suitable to go down the mountain now. As soon as he finished speaking, they heard a wolf howl. Qin Yining and Lian Xiaozhou could not help but tense up. Pang Xiao hugged Qin Yining's shoulder. As far as the eye could see, the branches of the forest were baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. The sound of wolves howling could also be heard. The north wind whistled, mercilessly drilling into people's necklines. The rustling sound of falling snow in the dark and silent night was like the footsteps of an unknown object. He suddenly remembered when Qin Yining was young. The dark night, the cold, the hunger, and the possibility of wild beasts pouncing on them at any time. They had to work non-stop every day. What if they suddenly fell sick? What if they encountered wild beasts or got injured? While other girls were living a comfortable life, his darling had already tasted the cold and warmth of the world in order to survive. Qin Yining did not notice Pang Xiao's strange emotions. He held Lian Xiaozhou's hand and asked, "Is there a cave nearby where we can take shelter for the night?" Lian Xiaozhou nodded. "Yes, let's walk this way along the slope." "Sister, come with me." Lian Xiaozhou held Qin Yining's hand. The two of them skillfully picked up a thick wooden stick to clear the obstacles in front of them. Their nimble footsteps surprised Pang Xiao and the others. Pang Xiao, Mu Jinghu, and Huzi hurriedly followed. After walking for about 10 minutes, Lian Xiaozhou found the familiar place. That place could not be considered a cave. It was just a depression formed by the thick roots of a large tree on the slope. It could cover half of the top of the head and block the wind. The five of them lit a fire in the middle. Qin Yining hung his cloak to make a curtain. Lian Xiaozhou followed suit. She took off her cloak and stood next to Qin Yining. Qin Yining ordered the three men. "Go find snow and pile it up. Once the snow is piled up and compacted, it will block the gap." The three obediently did as they were told. Everyone worked together and quickly made a cave for them to hide in. They entered the cave through a gap that only allowed one person to pass through. The warm bonfire's heat hit their faces. The slightly damp branches were abandoned. The dry branches that were chosen did not create much smoke when they burned. As a result, the heat from the bonfire quickly solidified the snow inside the house. I didn't think that Wang Fei was so skilled to be able to create such a warm snow house. Huzi smiled and said. Qin Yining smiled and said, "This is nothing. We are just temporarily squeezing in. If we live in a place like this for a long time, we will get sick." Huzi wanted to ask what kind of place Qin Yining had lived in when he was in the mountains. Was it a house or a cave? But when he saw Pang Xiao's distressed expression, he swallowed the words that had reached his mouth. Qin Yining and Lian Xiaozhou sat in the innermost corner. Pang Xiao spread out her cloak for Qin Yining and Lian Xiaozhou to use as a blanket. She sat down next to Qin Yining. Huzi and Mu Jinghu also sat down next to Pang Xiao. They took out the flatbread they had on them and used tree branches to skewer them over the fire. Qin Yining let Lian Xiaozhou lean against her shoulder. She leaned against Pang Xiao's shoulder. In this simple and warm environment, there was a faint smell of firewood and the fragrant flatbread in the air. It made people feel at ease. Perhaps because Pang Xiao was beside her, Qin Yining was not as vigilant as before in the mountains. She quickly fell asleep. Pang Shao originally wanted to wake her up to eat some flatbread. But when she saw that she was sleeping peacefully with her face flushed red, she could not bear to wake her up. She simply ate some flatbread with Huzi and Mu Jinghu in the snow. After arranging for them to take turns to keep watch, they went to sleep peacefully. The next day, the sky was bright. The 5 of them ate a few bites of flatbread and found their way down the mountain. After they were done packing, they returned to Liang City. Bing Tang guessed that Pang Shao had brought them out for a night and even called Lian Xiaozhou along. What they did must have had something to do with Lian Xiaozhou's background. But even though Qin Yining, Lian Xiaozhou, and Huzi had all gone, Bing Tang did not take the initiative to ask any of them. She did not need to ask what she should know. Qin Yining would have told her long ago. If it was dangerous to her, Qin Yining would only hide it from her. Everyone else had the same thought as Bing Tang and tacitly did not ask any more questions. Qin Yining changed out of her wet clothes. When the cold wind blew, she covered her mouth and sneezed 3 times. "Princess consort, don't catch a cold," Bing Tang said nervously. "I'll go and prepare some ginger soup first. You and little Kanji should eat a big bowl of it. It'll drive away the cold." Qin Yining smiled and nodded. "Give some to the 3 of them as well." "Got it." Bing Tang quickly went to borrow the inn's kitchen. Ji Yun took a hot handkerchief to help Qin Yining clean up. "The closer we get to the capital, the colder it gets. Princess Consort's body is cold. You should be more careful. That's why your hands and feet are as cold as ice. It probably won't happen in the future. It can't be helped. Last night, I slept in the snow." Achoo! Qin Yining rubbed her itchy nose and said with tears in her eyes, "It was very cold at night. Luckily, we found a very small cave and made a fire. Otherwise, who knows how cold it would be right now." Qi Yun sighed. "You've caught a cold. You don't have to wash your hair today. Wipe it clean and wear something thicker. Have some ginger soup and sweat it out. It'll be even better if you can sleep." Qin Yining nodded and wiped her nose with a piece of straw paper. Pang Shao ate the ginger soup next door. When she heard Bing Tang say that Qin Yining seemed to have caught a cold, she hurriedly returned to her room. Qin Yining had already finished the ginger soup in 1 gulp and chewed on a piece of ginger. It was so spicy that her forehead and neck were sweating. Pang Shao came in and saw Qin Yining wrapped herself in a blanket. Her heart ached as she said, "It's all my fault. I didn't consider everything thoroughly and didn't prepare to spend the night on the mountain. That's why you caught a cold. It has nothing to do with you. Everyone is fine except for me who caught a cold. That's my own problem." Qin Yining said with a smile, "Have you finished discussing? When are we leaving? You're sick. Let's rest here for 2 days before leaving. Weren't we supposed to rush to Mao City for New Year's Eve? If we delay any longer, I'm afraid we'll be in the wilderness on New Year's Eve." Pang Shao thought for a while and said, "Let's see how you're doing first. If it doesn't work out, we'll just stay here for New Year's Eve before leaving. Anyway, it's not the first time I've disobeyed an imperial decree." Qin Yining shook his head in amusement. "That won't do. You've already been caught red-handed. You can't add fuel to the fire." At this point, Qin Yining waved at Ji Yun and Bing Tang and called Lian Xiaozhou over. Bing Tang and Ji Yun knew that Qin Yining had something to say. They quickly retreated to guard the door and didn't let anyone near. "Jishi, I want to discuss something with you." "What's the matter?" Pang Shao asked seriously. Qin Yining held Lian Xiaozhou's hand and looked at her slightly nervous expression. He touched her cheek tenderly and said, I want to ask for your help to find someone suitable to take care of Xiaozhou and place her in a safe place. We've found that thing, but I'm afraid that sooner or later, we won't be able to hide Xiaozhou's identity. When that time comes, we'll get her killed. Pang Xiao lowered her eyes and pondered for a moment. She nodded. You're right. It's best to make sure nothing goes wrong. Lian Xiaozhou shook her head. Sister, I'm not afraid. I don't want to be separated from you, and I don't want to be separated from Sister Bing Tang either. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.